Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to Nerd Fight! The ultimate showdown where geek culture collides with unfiltered opinions and passionate debates. I'm your host, Mr. Know-It-All, bringing you the latest and greatest from the world of movies, TV shows, and all things nerdy. But hold on to your warp cores because the real captain of this starship is none other than SaltyTrekker. So strap in and get ready for a wild ride with the new Deadpool and Wolverine movie out. We're going to be ranking all of the Fox X properties. You ain't going to want to miss this. That means only one thing. It's time to fight. Nerd Fights.
What's up?
So, by the way, I forgot to, I haven't told you about this yet.
Okay.
So, there is a group of people, they call themselves the Salty Nerds Podcast.
Okay.
And now, you know, I did send them a cease and desist letter, but they're not listening to me. And unfortunately, and I know a couple of them, they're nice guys.
Right.
And unfortunately for them, their studio in Las Vegas got broken into
I saw that.
for the second time.
What?
This is the second time it happened.
Oh my gosh. I didn't realize it was the second time. Did you see the video?
Yes, where they actually got the guys that did it on video. Yep.
I shared it online.
I'm not saying that those guys are on my payroll. But we are on Saturday now. You know,
That's hilarious.
so just
Stop.
yeah.
No, that's too funny. Oh my gosh, welcome everybody to Nerd Fights. This is a Saturday edition of the show where we normally love to talk about all kinds of fun, geeky news and views and all kinds of stuff. What we're going to do today is going to be a lot of fun in light of all the stuff happening in the universe of everything that has to do with X-Men and the excitement for stuff.
Which we'll have more to talk about on Wednesday, actually, because
my gosh,
D23 is going on right now,
right this second.
Yeah, and they have dropped a couple of MCU info nuggets.
Ooh, so much fun stuff to cover with them about that. I'm, of course, Mr. Know-It-All. I'm helping kind of keep the ship steered, but the man at the center of this whole thing is a SaltyTrekker. So, man, I'm excited. We're going to go through it all, and we're going to do one of those fun, colored, tiered things.
And Stan, let me make this perfectly clear. Well, of course, you want Danny to be back as soon as possible, and I'm not saying that I'm just saying it's purely a coincidence that Danny happens to live in the same city as the Salty Nerds Podcast guys. That's just a coincidence. It has nothing to do with the fact that their place has been broken into. Nothing to do with it.
For sure.
Yeah.
But he also did watch X-Men 2 recently.
Yes, and we'll get to that. So what we're going to do, we're going to break these down in release date order. So we're going to start with the very earliest film and then work our way up to this year. And just to be clear, while I know that we talked about we're going to do all the X properties, but a few of these properties are actually outside of the X universe because they were referenced directly or indirectly in Deadpool and Wolverine, so they're kind of part of the same universe.
Right.
So even though some of the characters we're going to talk about are not mutants, and some were actually produced by companies other than Fox, notably New Line Cinema did like the Blade movies.
Oh yeah.
And I think did New Line do Punisher, or was that?
It was either. I think maybe, or was it? It wasn't Lionsgate, was it?
Oh, it might have been Lionsgate.
Back in the day, the old one?
Could have been. Yeah, that was back when Marvel was just selling their properties left and right.
Hey, man, they had to keep the lights on.
Well, you know, maybe if they had kept making good comic books. I'm just saying, if they had kept making good comic books like they did in the early to mid 80s, maybe they wouldn't have been fighting off bankruptcy.
Stop it. The Jim Lee run in the 90s was chef's kiss when they got these outfits that we know about. But anyway. So, all right. Please feel free to comment. The comments are going to be open. We want to absolutely hear what you guys have to say about these things as well.
And Mr. Know-It-All doesn't know this, so I need to make sure
you're... How do I not know stuff?
I don't know, because you're supposed to know everything.
Everything!
But this has been a long-standing rule on this channel ever since the first time we ever did any kind of ranking, which is that let's suppose that we put something particularly high or particularly low on the rank, and somebody gets pissed off about it. I accept bribes. You're muted. you muted yourself.
Because I was chewing, because I was eating a cracker,
Yeah.
the animal cracker. But yeah, no, if you're absolutely, if you want to, the super chats are going to be open, and by all means, please feel free to support the show, and you can of course buy Salty all day long. He will absolutely take you for that.
Now, granted, you can't just drop $1 and expect me to go from D to A tier or something. That ain't gonna happen.
Sure.
But you drop $5-10, I'll slide it around for you.
We can talk, yeah.
I'll definitely negotiate. Anyway, so Mr. Know-It-All, what is the first film chronologically that's referenced in Deadpool and Wolverine?
So I'm going by the way they have been numbered when they were given to me. So that's the actual case. Is that the case?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Then we should be good. All right. And the very first thing is actually not a film. It is the original X-Men from X-Men back in the 90s.
Yes, 1992, in fact.
Right, the animated series X-Men. So what? This was a really fun show. It had all of the trappings of the time. This is actually the look that came out of the Jim Lee comics that were happening at that stage, and so that's where the outfits came from and the whole 9 yards. Storm in a notoriously really white outfit, even though
I do not like that Storm costume.
I always thought it was supposed to be shiny black, but it ended up being white.
Yeah, I like Storm in her classic black tiara.
Oh yeah, the one we got later in X-Men 97 now.
Right, but that she had back when she was first introduced in Uncanny X-Men.
Yeah, that was awesome. That whole look was just iconic. It really was. And her cape almost had it gave the impression of wings, how it was set up.
Right.
It was really nice. I liked it.
And so that's, I think, Storm's best look. I think everybody else looks really solid in this version. My biggest issue is that this is one of the first times for me, because I stopped collecting comics before this. This is the first time for me that I heard Marvel Girl called Jean Grey.
Oh, really?
And it really pissed me off, because it's like, wait, they call everybody by their cool super mutant name except for Marvel Girl.
Yes. Well, because I think Marvel Girl felt like she would have, I don't know if they were cared back then, but it would have been the first time she would have been referred to as girl versus not being that. So
but that's what she was for 20 years.
I know. I'm just saying.
And if they wanted to look, and back in the 80s, when John Byrne took over the Fantastic Four, Sue Storm rebranded herself as the Invisible Woman. And
I remember that.
She was the Invisible Girl before that.
That's right.
She said, "Hey, I've grown up. I've been through some stuff." And
I've been through some stuff. I've had children.
Well, not only did she have kids, but she
and unlike her husband, that don't stretch all the time. Okay, so
yeah. Well, and actually, if I'm trying to remember if it was before or after a really, really potent issue called "In the Arms of the Octopus," where Reed Richards fights Doc Ock.
Wow.
And it's actually a really good issue, because the reason Reed was trying to get Doc Ock was he needed his help because Sue had been exposed to radiation and she was pregnant, and Doc Ock is an expert on radiation.
Right.
And so Reed gets Otto to volunteer to help him, but then his psychosis is triggered when they're in the Fantastic Car and they pass by one of J. Jonah Jameson's Spider-Man as a menace signs.
Right.
And so then he calls the arms to him subconsciously and fights Reed. And when they finally settle things down, they get to the Baxter Building, and the last frame of this comic book was, "We lost the baby about an hour ago."
Oh, that's rough.
And so it was just... and so it was after that Sue rebranded herself as the Invisible Woman, if I'm remembering correctly.
I can see that. Again, you go through some stuff. You get to earn the right to be a woman. All right, so where are we putting this on the tier list? Let's be real.
Okay, so look, I am not heartless, even though I do think the X-Men franchise is inferior to, it's like, the MCU and stuff. But I would definitely put this one in S tier. This is the best the X-Men have ever been in any kind of active media, as opposed to like comic books or something. This to me is absolute prime X-Men.
This was, I tell you what, it's the first time we got to see really mature storytelling, at least from my remembrance, in these, because back in the day, remember, cartoons weren't what they are now. Now they're just kind of weirdly escapism for escapism's sake and whatnot, but they aren't actually as cultured or cultivated as they were back then. They told good, full stories. And this was the first time I got to see actual stuff that reminded me of the physical comic books in an animated form.
Right. And so, yeah, this really did feel like a animated version of the comic book.
I'll go with that. That's fair.
Yeah.
My vote is honestly I want to put it on the A tier. Okay. I don't know that it was S tier yet. I want to reserve S tier for when we're really our socks are blown off. Okay. I feel like to do anything. What do you agree?
I'm okay with it. I do think that, then we're not going to put any of the X-Men movies in S tier. I'll tell you that.
Oh, no, it's real. That's real. No, it's real.
But
I think you're right.
But yeah, I can go A tier. I'm fine with that. I was trying to be generous because I think it is the best X-Men outing.
Sure.
And so that was 1992, and then just a couple of years later, we got our everybody gives credit to either X-Men or Blade for kicking off the modern comic book superhero movie, but it was really this that happened several years earlier that I think got things started. And so, what do we?
Hang on one second. Sorry, I was trying to grab it and then I got misplaced. Forgive me. You were talking about, of course. You were right. You're talking about Blade.
Whoops. Nope. Then that's out of order.
Okay. Well, that's on you because that's number 2.
Oh well.
So now we're talking about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but Blade is okay. So the funny thing about Blade is that it was before the X-Men films. I believe it's before the Spider-Man films. And it is definitely before any of the MCU, because the MCU didn't come around for almost a decade after Blade. And yet, it was R-rated. It did not hold back.
No, it didn't.
And it was it's a cult classic to this day, which is part of the reason that people like myself went absolutely bananas when Wesley Snipes walked on screen in Deadpool and Wolverine, because I wasn't expecting it, and it was so cool to see really the father of all these movies to be there.
Agreed. No, for sure. I love this movie. When I first saw it, I remember it was such a change from anything else that had ever come before it.
Yes.
And it was something that, it's funny, I wasn't even fully aware that the comic book existed until the movie. And then I was like, wait, this is a comic book thing? And so I go right into my retailer. I'm like, hey, who is this character? And they began sort of telling me about who he was. I know there'd been the
funny thing though, Blade didn't have superpowers when he first showed up. He was just a black guy who was a vampire hunter, and he first appeared in a Tomb of Dracula comic book.
Oh my gosh, that's real deep cuts.
I have it. And
do you really?
I do.
Oh.
And the funny thing is, Blade's on the cover going, "I'm gonna get you, sucker." It's like I'm not even making that up.
Of course he was, because why not? That's brilliant.
It's the 70s,
Oh yeah, that's what you did.
But yeah, awesome. so it wasn't until later that he was kind of reimagined as a half vampire.
Well, and I think that made him, honestly, I feel like that made him more interesting because it sort of placed him in a he was almost alongside the Punisher in that respect, in a way that I liked. At least in a way that I appreciated.
Well, and all his weapons were ridiculously lethal if you happen to be a vampire.
Right.
But if you were a human, it's just an ordinary sword.
I agree with that.
So
so where do you stand on where this lives?
Well, some mother effer is always trying to ice skate uphill is one of the best cheesy lines in all of cinema.
No one knows what it means, but it sounds amazing. It sounds so good.
And the fact that he repeated it in Deadpool and Wolverine
was brilliant. Chef's kiss.
Honestly, this is another one. I think this is S tier.
I do too.
The first Blade movie. Yes, the visual effects are a little bit dated, but that's because some of the visual effects were not originally supposed to be CG at all.
No, they weren't.
Like the blood was supposed to be all practical, but they couldn't get it to
Right.
work, and so then someone
Right.
got the idea of doing CG.
So that was for me. It was his, and I loved it because the other effects, like the turning into dust or fire or whatever, that stuff I thought held up really well.
Yeah, that still holds up today.
The choreography was brilliant, also.
Yeah,
for the
the
time.
fight. Yeah, the fighting is awesome. The dusting of the vampires is awesome. In fact, you could say that Thanos was inspired by some of that because it looks very similar to when Thanos dusted people. And the only thing that really didn't work was the blood effects at the end, and that's because it was a necessary compromise. And yes, Chris Christopherson, awesome as Whistler.
Oh my gosh, one of the best, most iconic roles I think for him.
Catch you effers at a bad time.
No, absolutely. It's so good. Chef's kiss for sure. No, absolutely.
So the best use of the F-bomb in a
One
serious,
of the yeah.
you know, as far as in a serious film.
Agreed.
Best comedic use of the F-bomb is yet to come up on this list.
No, for sure. That's awesome.
But yeah, all right. So we got an S for Blade and an A for X-Men,
Which I thought was, I
I
have a
feeling we're not going to quite score as highly now.
No, I don't think so either. Because obviously the next one is the original X-Men movie.
Yes.
I liked the original X-Men movie. For me, it was one of those movies that, for never having gotten an X-Men movie, it spent all the time I felt at the time it needed to. I think we're well past that season. I don't think you need a full-blown origin of everyone coming together and all that nonsense.
Right.
And it gave you the Professor X reaching out to Logan, and we got their version of Rogue, whatever. But at the same time, we got to see a version of Colossus. We got to see
Colossus doesn't appear until X2.
I thought he was one of the younger. He wasn't there already as a younger person.
Oh, we might have seen like that actor, but we never saw him actually do anything.
No. But you got introduced to Rasputin and Peter Rasputin, and it was.
We also got Kitty Pryde technically, but it was a different actor.
Yeah, totally. You get someone running through the walls, and it's like, oh, hello, Kitty, blah blah. And for sure, they did a lot of that kind of stuff. But I enjoyed the movie for what it was. I know it wasn't. I think now in retrospect, I think we all are very highly critical of it. I think it's a little underrated, but I don't think it's S tier at all. I'll be honest, I don't necessarily know if I think it's A tier. But it wasn't.
I would definitely not go A tier.
But it wasn't horrific. It wasn't horrific, and for a first debut, for a first theatrical version of the X-Men, it gave us Wolverine. Hey, we got a super chat. Oh my gosh, thank you. Our subscriber rather from CeeLo, was it CeeLo 20?
Oh, very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, way to go, CeeLo 20.
For some reason, I can't see it because I don't know why, but on my screen, the preview window has just me by myself.
That's weird.
Yeah, I don't know why. So you have to tell me when we get those notifications because I can't see.
I will make sure. I'll make sure to let you know.
So I think so here's some of my problems with it.
Go for it.
The fact that the producers were afraid to embrace the cheese. Right.
Yes.
They were totally afraid of the colorful uniforms, even though they're fine with a mansion with a super secret underground high tech, and
it was
superhero base,
right?
But we got to put them all in black leather.
Well, you know why? You had the Matrix movies that had just come out.
I know.
There was. I don't necessarily know that they were. I think they were absolutely afraid. By the way, especially after all the Fantastic Four stuff, they were just like, I don't know.
They cast an absolute pretty boy as Wolverine. And by the way, you might think, oh, come on, Hugh Jackman. Look at Hugh Jackman in X1. You're thinking of Hugh Jackman today where he's got lines and stuff on his face.
Sure,
where he actually looks like Logan now.
Right.
Back then, no, he looked like a freaking underwear model. and so... he was an absolute. The only thing that was not pretty boy about him was his stupid hairdo, and it looked stupid.
It's awesome.
His hairdo looked like he forgot how to comb his hair midway through.
Agreed. I absolutely agree.
So
where do you place this? Do you want to place this?
I would tend to go C tier.
See, I go B though. Okay. So what is this? Okay, so hold on. In my opinion, then we need to have this. We need to.
Malfeas thinks it's a B tier.
All right. So we have two disagreements.
Okay.
I say C. I say B.
Right, but
C.
disrespect to the original material, no faith in the original material as far as the costumes and the characterization of Wolverine. And in fact, Rogue. That wasn't Rogue. That was just some random girl, right? And then, the original X-Men weren't the original X-Men except for two of them. The fact that kind of like in the X-Men cartoon, they won't even call Jean Marvel Girl. And in fact, they even like Logan even makes a crack about, wait, you're Cyclops, he's Sabretooth, so what are you, Wheels? And but Jean has no code name. Why
Okay.
not? She's one of the team. If they're not going to call her Marvel Girl, they should have come up with. They should have just called her Phoenix, something. But no, I think that this movie played it safe just a little too much for me to give it a positive grade.
Okay, so my argument and my rebuttal, if you will, comes with only one caveat, which was, again, while I do agree to a certain extent in a point that you made, which is that it took they didn't do the whole the story right, if you will, they were like, oh, the original material. I agree. However, it was not based on the original material. It was based on the Ultimate X-Men. They were taking a lot of their informed behavior from the Ultimate X-Men. And when you look at the Ultimate X-Men, which is the image that's on the screen right now, they do look an awful lot like the Fox X-Men.
Well, it's also the Fox Fantastic Four is very much like the Ultimate Fantastic Four.
Agreed with it. Right. A lot of elements borrowed from there. So so for me, the reason why I'm like, okay, I never envisioned that they were going to try to make the original with all the colors and everything.
Yeah.
And at the time I was reading this and I was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense to me. And later on, the Ultimate Universe also informed the Avengers movies later with Nick Fury and everything else.
Right.
Like a lot of that information too. But so for me, that's why I feel like it belongs.
Okay, you know what? I would be totally willing to go B if Halle Berry had dressed like that.
Stop it.
I'm just saying.
That's awesome.
But okay, so what do you guys think? We'll in the chat. I know that Malfi's already said that a B tier, but anybody else? Do you think B or C?
I'm down for either one. I felt like that was a nice, safe place for it to live in my own. But I'm willing to go.
Safe is what describes this movie. That's the thing.
It's okay. So how about this? Why don't we go between? Do you want to put it between? I know you normally don't do that. But we can put it between B and C.
Well, unless there's something, because so far nobody's saying anything in the chat about it. But although Death by Rabies really likes you,
yeah.
So that's nice of you, Death by Rabies. But what about B or C tier for X-Men? That's more important right now.
That's what we got to find out. We got to know. Yeah. It's like thanks for the compliments. Now get back to talking about what we're talking about.
Well, he says I really like Mr. Know-It-All, and in the format that he brings to your channel, you really need to keep this guy going. Yeah, I have this tendency of killing co-hosts for some reason.
No, you're good. I appreciate you guys. Right on. But I'm willing to go between if you want. I'm really literally. You want
to go between unless we get some overwhelming response from the chat. But so far, nobody seems to.
All right, we're gonna leave a smack in the middle there. Yeah. Okay, so the next, if that's the case, then all right. So after the X-Men movie, the second X-Men movie, the next thing we got was, at least according to the list that I have, was the sequel to your favorite movie, of course, Blade 2.
Yes.
Now, Blade 2 was substantially, they chose to try to go bigger, and they chose to try to go with some of the, whatever worked for just Blade, they decided to go deeper into more of it,
right,
and expand the world building just a hair more. I don't necessarily know that I needed everywhere it went, but at the same time, it wasn't terrible.
Right. I think Blade 2, I mean, I'll give them credit in that they tried to do something different. They didn't try to just repeat the first one. I also will give them credit in that it's like Ron Perlman was fun.
Yeah, Ron
The
Perlman was
idea
really
of
fun.
the blood pack was interesting.
The fact that they've been working on already a countermeasure.
A blade response force from the it was almost like it was the anti-Avengers, right? He was going up against a team that's whole purpose was to take Blade down. And except that now he has to work with that team because there's something worse than vampires, and it's not Blade.
Agreed.
And so conceptually, I thought it was good. In execution, it was missing the magic that Blade really had.
And again, sequels always suffer from, especially when you have such a great start like the first Blade movie. Everyone's like, "What you got next?" Matrix dealt with it. Lethal Weapon dealt with it.
About the only franchise that didn't do that was the MCU, but then the MCU fizzled after Endgame.
Which was still like that was a long stretch.
That's 20 movies later, but still, that's the idea there is that like they went from Iron Man and Iron Man 2, both solid movies, and the Hulk and Captain America, and then the Avengers, and it just kept building and building and building. Whereas with Blade, I think, but now granted, Blade came before all that, and so Blade 2 was just a straight up sequel to Blade. It wasn't part of something bigger.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. So where do you think it lives?
I would tend to put this at the, I'm really debating between an A and a B.
I was at B, so I'm with you. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll go B then, because I really, I hate to put it that low, but at the same time, it's just not that. It's not great. It lacks greatness, which the first movie
lacks
had.
Greatness.
Yes.
Oh my God, I forgot you.
Death by Rabies thinks it's a D.
Oh no! Blade 3's coming.
Yeah,
trust me.
Yeah.
I'm with you with Death by Rabies, but plus with Blade 3 coming, I'm like, we got to figure out. There has to be a happy place somewhere because Blade 3 takes it to a whole nother bottom tier level, which is so sad because it's got.
And by the way, I was wrong before about what came first. It was Blade, so I was thinking of something else. So
no, I gotcha. All right, so the next one that we're going to talk about is the Daredevil movie. Oh, this movie. I loved it so much when it first came out. Now I can much more with mature eyes see the places where it falls short. But
have you seen the director's cut?
No, I didn't even know there was a director's cut.
Oh man, the director's cut is so much better.
I gotta find that.
Yeah. So there's more about Kingpin in the director's cut.
Wow.
It's just a much better put together film. Now, is it great? No. But it's definitely the director's cut. Like the theatrical cut of Daredevil, I would probably give a C. The director's cut of Daredevil, I would probably go a high B. It is significantly better.
Okay.
I like the fact, I'll tell you, so some of the things I liked about Daredevil. I like the costume.
Okay.
This was an early attempt, and they basically did what the MCU was famous for later. They took the comic book accurate costume and just changed the materials it was made out of.
Yes.
And so instead of red spandex, which would have looked stupid, they put him in red leather armor.
Which I think makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, and later on, even now in the most recent stuff, in the Daredevil stuff from Netflix, which is now eventually going to become the Disney one, his outfit I love. It's just become, like everybody's become sort of a tactical base.
Yeah.
And which, frankly, any of us could order from. And I love that part. I love that as well. I think it looks nice now. But at the same time, at the time, you were like, oh, this is a take. Okay.
Yeah.
The only thing I didn't like was his mask.
Yeah, but I also another thing I really did like about this movie is Ben Affleck put a lot of work into learning what it was to be blind.
He really did.
And so there's a lot of little detail stuff that they don't, they don't bother explaining to you why he folds his money the way he does. But that is something that blind people do. And so there's a lot of stuff like that in this movie because Ben Affleck wanted to be authentic with his portrayal of a blind person. And I really like that. I really liked the overall concept, but this is just a little, it's like the CG is almost there. It's not quite because if I remember correctly, this came out after Spider-Man, but Spider-Man looked better. And the the Kingpin, well, I didn't care about the race swap for Kingpin.
Neither did I.
Yeah, that didn't bother me at all because let's face it, he looked like Kingpin.
Yeah.
Because
he did a wonderful job.
Yeah, he's one of the few people big enough to be Kingpin.
He had the pinky ring, he had the diamond topped cane, the whole bit.
So I liked
nice.
Kingpin, but we didn't get enough of him. Even in the director's cut, where we get more Kingpin, we need still more Kingpin. Because Daredevil, it's kind of funny because Kingpin was actually a Spider-Man villain that I think it was Frank Miller brought over to Daredevil.
That's right.
And
Frank Miller was like, how do we have a street level New York City crime guy who's never ever bumping up against Kingpin? Like we totally should have that. And it was a stroke of genius, in my opinion, because quite frankly, Kingpin very quickly became a Daredevil adjacent villain.
Right. And rightly. And the thing is, Kingpin is an awesome villain. And by the way, I do like the new take on Kingpin with Vincent D'Onofrio as well.
Oh, pitch perfect, yeah.
But this was it Ving?
Yeah, Ving Rhames.
Yeah,
no, not Ving Rhames. No, not Ving Rhames.
No, the other guy that I always confuse with Ving Rhames.
Me too.
It makes my wife mad at me because she's like, "You just think all black people look the same." No, they're two gigantic black dudes.
Love it. I love it.
But he's the guy that died. Oh man,
hold on. I'm looking him up right now because you're absolutely right. I should know this.
Yeah, you're black.
It was. I hate you so much. It's where is he? Oh, not Daredevil versus Spider-Man. Wow, that went to the crates. This was Daredevil from which movie? This is the 2003?
Yeah, something like that.
Where was he? Here it is. No, it's still trying to show me the Daredevil from the Daredevil, Ben Affleck Daredevil movie. What year was this? What year did it come out? That's what I need to know. There it is. Michael Clark Duncan.
Yes, Michael Clark Duncan.
Michael Clark Duncan plays the Kingpin. He did a great job.
Green Mile guy. That is correct, Stan.
Jon Favreau played Foggy.
Yeah, Jon Favreau is in his first Marvel appearance there.
Ellen Pompeo plays Paige, Karen Page.
Yeah. And so, I really, really liked a lot of what they brought together for this. Yeah. But it just didn't quite gel.
You didn't like Jennifer Garner as Elektra? Okay, I liked her as Elektra because she was the flavor of the month. She was real big. Alias was on TV.
I'll be honest, I liked her better in Elektra than I liked her in this.
Oh, really?
And I didn't like the movie Elektra, but I liked her better in Elektra.
That makes sense. Yeah. Like, I can see that.
Yeah, but because in this, she just seemed like she was just some stuck-up chick with a couple of sai.
Right.
In Elektra, she seemed like a warrior.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not sure. Do you know what the budget of Daredevil was compared to Spider-Man? That's a good question.
That is a great question.
Let's see.
I'll go to Box Office Mojo.
2003. All right, so 75 million according to Google for Daredevil.
Yeah. It ended up grossing worldwide 179 million, which at the time was mediocre at best. Today it would have been a total flop.
And Spider-Man had 139, so Spider-Man had almost double the budget.
More money.
Yeah,
clearly.
More money.
Absolutely. So where do you think this lives in the tier list? Do we want to say? Do you think C level?
Well, like I said, I'm spoiled because I've seen both versions.
Okay.
You haven't. So my final verdict would be B because of the director's cut. So, but what would you say?
I was going to say C, but I'm down because I haven't seen the director's cut. I'm down for trusting your opinion. You want to go B? No,
let's put it in C because, and we'll have to watch the director's cut together sometime.
Okay, I'm down. Yeah, I'm totally down for that.
All right.
So that was, and again, I think historically speaking, that movie lives in sort of a sweet spot where people started seeing, oh, these things can actually somewhat be taken seriously in a way that really works.
And Spider-Man really took that to the next level, even though he's not a part of this.
Right.
Spider-Man was the first one where people are like, oh, you can actually do it like the comics. Not just because up to this point, Fox was... Daredevil I don't think is Fox, but the Fox movies all tried to play it too safe, to tone down the comic booky stuff, even though they're comic book adaptations. Daredevil and Spider-Man were the first ones that were like, no, we're just going to take the character and put him on screen.
Agreed. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so this brings us to the next movie in line, which was, of course, the sequel to the X-Men movie, X2. X-Men United.
All right. I think this is the most overrated movie in the franchise. Everybody talks about how awesome this scene is, or this movie is. The only reason they think it's awesome is because Wolverine goes full rage for like 10 seconds.
And it was like PG rage.
Yeah, it was, PG rage. He's stabbing people with 6 knives and not a drop of blood.
But it was one of the coolest, when they come into the mansion and you got to see everybody, like Bobby does that really cool ice wall. You get to see Iceman, or you get to see Colossus completely metal over.
Yeah.
Although
I was disappointed by the look of Colossus because...
Why?
Because they made it look like muscular strands as opposed to the bands, because the first comic book.
Did they really?
Yeah, if you look carefully, it looks like muscle. It looks like muscle tissue made out of metal.
And I think the kid in me at the time was just like, "Ooh, Colossus with lines." Yeah. But you're right. I think you're right. It was, instead of being the literal
bands of metal,
which is iconic, and that's what he did perfect in Daredevil and Deadpool later.
Deadpool was if Colossus looked like that, I would bump up the grade of this movie just for that.
Yeah,
because I will tell you, my favorite thing about this movie was the opening scene with Nightcrawler.
Okay.
I thought that Nightcrawler was freaking awesome in that opening scene. Then he sucked.
Well, because they didn't do anything with him after that,
right? And they
just sort of existed, and I'm like, he's fun. Use him.
And the thing is that like I think about some of the great stuff from the comic books. I was like, one thing that they did not shy away from in the comic books, even in the 70s and 80s, was the fact that, okay, Nightcrawler is a devout Catholic. Colossus, being a Soviet citizen, was atheist. And the two of them would talk about it sometimes, And
absolutely.
That was interesting. That was something they could have brought into this, and, nothing. And instead, after the opening sequence where Nightcrawler almost assassinates the President of the United States, he's relegated to a background character. And, and then he shows up at the end to pull people out of Cerebro, and so, but I did not care for that, as far as the fact that Nightcrawler was so cool and then they do nothing with him. This movie also, has a couple of weird coincidences, like you muted yourself again.
Sorry, ABJ asked, what was the plot of X2? Real quick, the plot of X2, to put simply, was that there is a quote unquote cure for the mutant gene, and now they're
X3.
being. Is it X3?
Yeah,
I thought that was X2.
No, X2 is Stryker.
Oh my God, you're right.
Wants to.
I'm so confused right now.
Control the mutant menace.
Right, and that's where we get our. That's where we get our.
And so he gets his son, who is
Yeah.
supposed to be Mastermind, but is just a complete invalid attached to a doohickey.
Sure.
And that's another thing that I didn't like, because Mastermind is actually a really interesting villain you could play with.
No, for sure.
Because he can totally warp your perception of reality.
Yes.
And the end of this movie was teasing the Phoenix, and Mastermind is what unleashed the Phoenix in the comic books. They absolutely could have done something with that.
I agree with that. I think that, and especially knowing, because I'm pretty sure, my understanding is from those early days, they knew that was eventually someplace they wanted to go, and that was actually originally seen as where this franchise was supposed to. That was their trilogy arc, was to get there,
right,
and to get there meaningfully. That's one of the reasons why 3 fell on its face so hard.
But they kind of meandered.
Right. No, absolutely meandered.
Yeah,
that's a great way to put it.
Creep is saying your name is Mr. Know-It-All sometimes.
Mr. Know It, kinda.
Yeah.
Mr. Know It, some. No, but yeah, no. Now that you say that makes sense.
Death by Rabies is having coffee, so it says do not rank this movie until you get back.
Nice, I appreciate that. Quick, everyone, stretch for time. We're all just gonna stop.
Yeah,
so Max Rabies can get in. No, but it's funny because literally my next question is: so where do you think this lives on our tier list, or where should it live?
I think it's a solid. You see, I'm thinking it's like a C plus. I don't want to say a straight up C because do I put it at the same level as Daredevil? No,
Well, the problem is you put it at the
but
same level as the X-Men movie that it came before. I honestly
I
think
know, but it's not as good as the first one, and I didn't like it.
see, now that
I know
remember which
everybody
one it
thinks
was,
this is the best of them.
I don't think it's the best of them, but I definitely think it's real. I thought it was much better than the first one in that it continued to evolve the overall story forward for us.
Right.
They don't fall on its face. They don't fall on their face till the third movie. The third movie is when it, for me,
All
falls
right,
on its
so
face.
you see, all right, I'll let you have the B if you want.
Okay.
If you want to say it's better,
It's like, I'll let you have the B as I'm like, good, boom, put it there.
yeah, because it is at least it's overrated.
Okay, I'll go with that. I will also give you it. I do think it's overrated.
Because most people would say, "Oh, it's an A, it's an S," because it's got Wolverine going rage for 10 seconds. That's like saying Rogue One is the best Star Wars movie because Darth Vader goes all berserk at the end.
Bro, Darth Vader going ham on everyone was amazing, but no, it's not the best. Yeah. But still, that definitely.
It's not even the best lightsaber scene. I'm just
stop.
It's just really cool to finally see Vader unleash.
Yeah, to actually get to see him in a way that we've never gotten to see him just fully wreck shop at the height of his power.
Yeah.
Unlike later on when he's basically decrepit old man against Obi-Wan and they're like,
yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Right. Well, it's so funny because, I mean, you had two actors, neither of which knew anything about sword fighting, waving sticks at each other. So, what do you expect? And they didn't have a choreographer back then. They were just like, sword fight.
Sorry, I'm gonna tell my wife realized I thought my wife was gonna come get the dog before she left because she had to go somewhere, and so she didn't. So I'm like texting her, and I thought she wasn't paying attention to my texts. So literally, it's a string of just me. Hey, come here. Where are you at? Can you? And just literally just, and she goes very calmly. Did you forget I told you goodbye? And I was like,
I remembered you said goodbye.
I think I did forget you said goodbye. And I said, that's totally me.
So two things. First of all, ABJ, all the X-Men movies are about the X gene.
Yes.
So
if you don't believe us, just watch the opening crawl.
Yeah, because every single one, mutation.
That's right. Yeah, with the DNA strands and everything. Yes. Because that was the era when we got all of the title things that were like super, like Spider-Man did it.
And this was the peak of Hollywood not knowing how evolution works.
Correct.
Yeah.
Totally.
And then also I want to answer, Dinner Bell says, don't forget about when the Flame Guy goes all ham on the police cruisers. See, if it was that awesome, you wouldn't call him the Flame Guy.
No, Pyro.
Yeah,
come on.
You would call him by his name. And
true.
I was disappointed because Pyro is so much more than that.
Right.
And like Pyro can make dragons out of fire attack.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. Before we go to the next thing. So ABJ goes, that sounds like a stupid plot, Stanley. And to which, and I will now put it on screen, Stan Lee said, Stryker kidnaps Professor X to trick him into using Cerebro to kill every mutant on Earth. First, Stanley was an excellent, very tight, abbreviated. That's exactly what it was. Yes. And ABJ, that's like all the comics ever. It's just, let's get this person to do this thing.
I'll put it to you more succinctly. A government agent tries to pit a wheelchair-bound disabled person against another wheelchair-bound disabled person. That's you, and you muted yourself again. What is with you in muting?
Because I'm chewing on it. I don't want to crunch in everyone's
ears.
Well,
stop eating during the show.
I am starving, bro. I didn't get a chance to eat anything from my last podcast I was on. So I'm like grabbing stuff and I'm like running to the house trying to frantically get something.
The irony of the way that I describe the plot is that, and I actually, I wish I still had it. I had a picture that I made once. Where it said, this is not the X-Men, and it has a picture of like the X-Men charging into battle. It said, this is, and it shows a cancer ward.
Oh.
Because that's what genetic mutation does,
No, totally.
It does. But anyway, so moving onward, on that happy note.
Thank you, by the way. Thank you, Stanley, for seeing my. You know what? I'm going to take that as support. I'm not going to take it as anything else.
The pros know how to turn off the cough button.
Shut up. Anyway, so let's go to the next thing before, because here we go. Okay, the next movie was Punisher.
Okay. Now, keep in mind, this is specifically the Thomas Jane Punisher film.
Yes.
Because this is the one, it was a very deep cut, but it was referenced in Deadpool and Wolverine because the Russian, who it's the best fight scene in this movie, shows up as one of Cassandra Nova's henchmen.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, and it's not the same actor, but it is the exact same outfit.
Right. And I love that. I love
and
that.
He's the same size.
He's very much the same size, for sure.
So that's why we included the Punisher here. I actually, you know what? I remember seeing this in theaters, and I remember not being particularly impressed.
Agreed. Same.
Then I watched it a few days before seeing Deadpool and Wolverine because I heard the Russian was in Deadpool and Wolverine.
Okay.
And I was surprised how good it is. I agree. I was like, wait a minute. So this is not too far off from the comics. He does wear the skull most of the movie.
Yes, he does.
Unlike other Punishers that almost never wear it. His family was...
Or don't wear it till the climax of their thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
which
seriously.
I hate. I really hate that. And the superhero trope where the superhero never looks like the superhero until the last 5 minutes of the movie, I'm done with that.
Like, I'm over that. I'm over it.
If we don't see 4 people wearing blue with the number 4 on their chest until the last 5 minutes of Fantastic Four,
no, you're going to see it.
I'm going to be mad.
They released.
I know about
today.
the one. I know about the one picture.
I love it. By the way, I'm down.
Yeah, but I'm just saying we need to see them looking like their characters.
Agreed. Where do you place this Thomas Jane Punisher movie? Let's be real.
This is a tough one for me. I thought it was way better than I expected when I rewatched it.
But what did you think it was originally? And then let's start there.
Originally, I thought it was kind of boring.
Okay.
I was disappointed because it's R-rated, but it's not like No Holds Barred R-rated.
Yeah, they're not utilizing the R other than a couple of moments and times for that.
Right. There's some gore. There's a few swears, but yeah, it's a very light R, as opposed to Blade. There's no question they were going for an R.
Sure.
The Punisher, you could edit probably about 2 minutes out of the movie and make it PG-13.
I could see that.
And so, for that, best I could do would be a B.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I like, even though I can enjoy a movie and still think it's a C. Like, for instance, if I was going to watch the Fantastic Four movies.
Well, I said that's my best. I'm trying to be nice. So
no, I would say C. I think it's C.
I'm fine with C.
But it's not a bad C. I'm not like, ew, it's gross, it's stinker.
Well, C technically means average.
Right. There you go. Yeah, no, I'm down for a C. I think a C is
the only
a great
grade that means we didn't like
it
is D.
Yeah, D, we're just like, this is dog crap. Stay away from it all day long.
Yeah.
You're not going to like nothing to do with it, I promise. Right. But all right, now, which we may very well have our first one of the. Speaking of which, Blade 3.
Yeah.
Woo.
So
this one,
Blade Trinity.
Can you smell that? You smell that?
Yeah.
It's awful. It smells so bad.
Okay, so I'm trying to say the positives of Blade Trinity,
and you're done.
No.
I'm messing with you. I'm like, and we're done.
I'm trying to remember exactly how he said it. Something to the effect of "you maniacal thunder c word."
Yep.
I did love that.
I love that line too.
Yes.
I know, and it was what's her face? Oh my god, I can't remember her name right this second.
Oh, that was the vampire chick.
Yes, she was wonderfully terrible.
This totally embraced the cheese. And the problem is it went too cheesy considering it's the Blade franchise.
Right.
And I understand why this movie caused a rift between Wesley Snipes and Ryan Reynolds. Because this movie felt like a Ryan Reynolds film, not like a Wesley Snipes film.
Hold on. Let me have to go there, though. It had a vampire... It's fun. I think... Yes, there you go.
Vampire Pomeranian, yes.
Vampire Pomeranian, Vampire Triple H... Because they were like, oh, quick, guest stars and everything. And let's, like, The Rock is doing a movie over there, The Rundown. Let's throw another wrestler in a movie. It's got to be good. And it's like, no.
Let's rename Dracula Drake.
It's so sad.
It
was awful.
Yeah, but we did get our first glimpse at Deadpool.
Oh, stop. I know what you're saying. I see that. He was very mouthy like that,
Yes.
and I did like that.
The irony is that he was making fun of Blade because he uses swords.
Oh, yeah, it's true. Remember
And so-
that? I love that line.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Well, you know, it doesn't have the range of a sword.
Sword.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was like, right on, man.
Yeah. So there's a lot to hate about this movie. And there's
This is where they set up that Whistler had created an entire secret group that Blade knew nothing about.
yes.
And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, that made no sense whatsoever.
And I'm like,
Because-
why is Whistler a
Wait,
secret
you're
agent
telling
man
me
all
that
of a sudden?
Whistler was hiding away in a rundown garage
Yeah.
making gadgets for Blade while he was training his super secret daughter and her pack of friends to go and fight vampires?
Yep.
No, I don't buy
No,
it.
I agree. I don't either.
And so, plus, they had a really stupid, we can make a virus MacGuffin. Because basically what they're doing is committing genocide against vampires in this. No holds barred, absolute genocide where they create a biological weapon that kills all vampires, and we're supposed
one
to be
does.
and we're supposed to be okay with that. But the thing is, if all vampires were truly evil, then Blade wouldn't exist.
I agree.
So, and Blade actually fell in love with the one vampire chick in Blade 2.
I know, the daughter.
Yeah. So I don't think I think the second movie, for lack of a better term, humanized the vampires a little bit. And you got to see that not all vampires are all bad. They are driven by the thirst, but then technically so is Blade.
That's true. I'll
And
go with that.
and so I think that they this one kind of craps on the legacy of the first two films
100%.
in the name of humor. And while some of the humor genuinely works for me, particularly anything coming out of Ryan Reynolds' mouth, it's like
What was
okay,
with the beard? What
Yeah,
was that? What was that? It was like the pre-Tony
he
Stark
was
beard.
trying not to look like a wuss. I think that's what it was. He was trying to look tough. The problem is when wimpy guys put beards on to look tough, they look even more wimpy.
True story.
And this was before Ryan Reynolds got super duper jacked like he did for later films.
Oh, hey, Creep's going to go grab something to eat. He asked if we talk about something else while he's gone. Don't worry about Creep. We got you.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
So the IRS of the real vampires.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
Dinner bells.
And
Great stuff.
So and honestly, the worst thing about this film is it killed the franchise because
did.
we didn't see Blade again until this year. Not counting that horrible TV show version of Blade. I mean, we didn't see Wesley Snipes as Blade again until this year.
So what do you think? Where does this live, you think?
I'm going straight up D.
Oh, good. So am I. We're in agreement.
Yeah. So I as much as I liked Ryan Reynolds in it, it wasn't enough to elevate a film that wasn't supposed to be funny.
Agreed. But, I don't think that, I think misery loves company. And as a result, the next movie on the list, Elektra.
See, now this is what I say. I liked her in this film. Jennifer Garner sold that she was a badass in this film to me.
Okay. Yes, she does.
But everything else about the film sucked.
100%.
So yeah, this one needs almost no discussion whatsoever. It is a straight up D. This film is just absolute dumpster fire with a really cool badass in the middle of the fire. So she looks awesome as she's burning alive.
Dang. My issue, honestly, my biggest issue, I think, with the movie wasn't so much that I thought it was bad. I did think it was bad. My issue was that, I'm sorry, but Elektra's never been, and there's no pun intended, an electrifying character in the comics.
Right.
She's been an ancillary, an adjacent character to Daredevil. Even when they tried giving her a book, most of the ninja stuff and the organization took most of the attention.
Right.
And it wasn't even that focused on her tremendously. So it's not as if she was this massive draw, even in the comics. They were just quick franchises. Let's do stuff.
I think the reason that they were going for the Elektra film was because of the fan reverence for the death of Elektra in the comics.
Agreed.
And so
and what's her Jennifer Garner's cachet at the time was really, her star was very high.
Yes.
So they were like, sweet, we can go maybe we'll do something with this.
Now
And
Stan Lee wants us to compare Elektra to Catwoman. Now, here's the tough thing about that. Both of them, the main character looks good.
Yes, it was better than Catwoman.
I will say this, though. Here's the funny thing. Halle Berry looks better than Jennifer Garner, but Catwoman is a worse film than Elektra.
At least Elektra tried to take the material and do something with it. Catwoman just reinvented everything.
Yeah, Catwoman was like, oh, yeah, it's not even Selena Kyle. And Catwoman now has superpowers based on Egyptian cat gods.
I will say, special note, a shout out and note that Halle Berry, one of the best, most grounded human beings about that movie.
Oh, yeah. I love the fact she accepted her Razzie.
She showed up at the Razzies after having she got an Oscar for something else.
Yeah. I think it was
shows up at the
Monsters
Razzies.
Ball.
That's right. And then she shows up at the Razzies and like, I'm here. We're going to do this. And I was like, God love you. And even now on all the socials, she's very open. Like she celebrated the anniversary of the movie. And it was as she's like, hey, it may have been bad, but it's a time in my life, blah, blah, blah. And I was good for you. Good for you.
I got to say, I would not, I could see Halle doing this, and I would absolutely love to see this in a future film. You have something happening where, like, with Deadpool, and he's like, okay, I need the help of some X-Men here, right? And then you have Halle Berry come in. And she could say something like, you know what happens to a toad when it's hit by lightning, don't you? And Deadpool could turn around and go, well, no, what? And then she could go, well, I don't know. And then she like puts on a cat mask.
You're so fired.
And then he just worst. Then he just shoots her in the face.
It's like, and you're done. We're done. Sorry, wrong universe. Get out.
And then he could look at the camera and say, sorry, guys, we're not going for Razzies here.
Yeah, no. That would be so perfect. That would be so perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So the next movie, however, I think we will have some things to say about is Fantastic Four.
Yes, not Fant Four Stick. No. That comes much later.
This was the first Fantastic Four movie I remember before I ever got into film punditry or anything like that. I watched it, I sat there the whole time, enjoyed the movie, walked out, and I went, is that movie going to win anything? No. But it was a lot of fun. And for me, this is one of those where fun wins out for me.
Right.
I enjoyed, despite some of the goofy elements, I actually enjoyed what this movie does.
See, this movie is like really tears me because now I'm a huge Fantastic Four fan.
Yes. Now.
And hey, Andy Tiger, we are ranking all of the movies referenced by Deadpool in Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yep.
Which is mostly the X-Men films. But there's also the Fantastic Four, Blade, Daredevil, Elektra. So this is half of a perfect Fantastic Four movie.
Yes.
Johnny and Ben are absolutely spot on perfect. And I don't care what anybody says, the Thing costume works for me.
Me too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. People give it so much crap, and I actually love like the scene where he picks the fire truck up out of before it falls off the bridge.
Yeah,
I believed everything in that, and it was mostly practical.
The suit was entirely practical, and the you know what really sold it too in some scenes was the sound design. Like I remember when Ben's sitting on the bridge looking all depressed, and he wipes his brow, and you hear the sound of rock rubbing against rock.
Yeah.
And stuff like that really sold it.
It did.
That you got the idea that, okay, he's just mutated to where he's made out of solid stone.
Yes. And he did still kind of look like Michael Chiklis.
Yes.
Like they did. I hope they do something like that with the new one. Even I know it's going to be CGI like they do the Hulk. But give me something that at least has the facial features that you can still tell the guy's under there. Because you're right. Even though it was a full prosthetic suit, it looked like Michael Chiklis, bro.
Right.
It really did.
So I was totally down with the Thing and the Human Torch. I thought that they were both absolutely spot on perfect.
Absolutely. Same.
Reed, however, came across as baby Reed Richards.
Oh, stop. Ewan Gruffin, don't do it to him.
Like I said, he looks good now to play Reed.
No, totally. If he's cast now, you'd be like,
now that it's like almost 20 years later, he could play Reed Richards.
Yeah.
Back then, he was way too young. And I'm sorry, but flavor of the month for Sue, and that did not work.
Oh, poor Jessica Alba. You're right. Just
You know,
as much as I love her, and I love
Jessica
her
Alba,
personality.
yeah, I love Jessica Alba in Sin City,
Yes,
and other things that she's done. But in this, it came across as, "Hey guys, we got Jessica Alba."
I know. It's so sad. I was like, it's rough.
Yeah,
I thought it's funny. Chris Evans was brilliant as the Human Torch.
yeah,
He doesn't get enough credit for that whole role. His
and
personality, I
he
thought,
sold it
was,
again in
oh my
Deadpool.
god, so much.
Yeah,
You're like, this is definitely Johnny Storm older.
yeah, and the funny thing
Absolutely.
is that as bad as it was, like when when you're sold on the whole thing that
Yeah.
Deadpool was undercutting him in front of Cassandra, and then
Yes.
you find out in the post credit scene that he really said all that stuff. Johnny
Spoilers.
would say that stuff.
Totally.
You know, granted, Johnny wouldn't cuss in classic comics, but still, he would absolutely be ripping her to shreds. Stanley once says that the trailer for the new Fantastic Four shows the Thing on dating shows only as shadow silhouette, but he looks more human sized. Okay,
Oh,
so first of all, I've seen that pic. It's not first of all,
I haven't seen it.
it's not footage.
Yeah.
It's a basically concept art.
Oh, copy.
And so at least my understanding, I don't think it was actual live footage. But
Sure.
yes, he does look about this maybe a bit bigger than Chickless, but not like Hulk sized.
So where are we putting this, by the way?
All right, so I'm so torn on this because I love the Fantastic Four so much it automatically gets a point bump from me just for being the Fantastic Four. However, Doctor Doom, Reed, and Sue are
I
not.
liked him. I liked their take. No, it's not pitch perfect, but remember the
Doctor
era
Doom
you're
doesn't even
in.
does Doctor Doom come across at all as Eastern European?
I'm not see. Look, I love the fact that's what you get hung up on. Listen to me. The same way where I wasn't getting hung up on the outfits at the time. You gotta remember where we were at the time. Where we
He's
were at the
the
time.
dictator of a small Eastern European country.
Where we were at the time. This was the closest analog we'd gotten. Way better than the Roger Corman films from back in the day. Okay, like it was. This was like legit. I was like, okay. They had the Baxter Building. You had them. You had everybody playing, doing the stuff, and they borrowed the. He got scarred and got powers or whatever from now. I've always
That's
said
another Ultimate
stop
thing.
giving. Yeah, I've always said stop giving Doom powers. His power is enough in his character, the mystic arts he trains in, the technology he uses.
He's Tony Stark and Doctor Strange rolled into one.
Absolutely.
You don't need to give him lightning power.
Right. Supernatural abilities don't need to happen because of whatever.
Right.
In fact, he's better because he's not that. And I have no idea what happened to my screen. My screen suddenly became an image.
It's a game?
Yeah, I think I rebooted my Apple TV.
Oh.
That's so weird.
Great. So now we're going to get a copyright strike from Apple. Thank you very much.
Probably. I can see that.
So anyway, so with a +1 bonus, I would give it an A.
Okay.
Without the +1 bonus, I would give it a B.
Okay.
And I would agree. Indie Tiger says this is the best Fantastic Four movie. So far, yes, 100%. Not the best character in a Fantastic Four movie. That comes in the next one. But the best overall Fantastic Four movie, absolutely, I agree with you.
Right on. And again, I liked what they were doing with this. God, Lee, it was a quick dead period there between these two. Because I'm just shocked about that. So where do you think ultimately this lives? I want to say B myself, but if you want to say C, I'm down. I'll respect your wish because you are the Fantastic Four
I think
guy.
B is fine for Fantastic Four.
Okay, very cool. So my feeling. So then if that's the case, what we're looking at, there was a weird dead period, is what I was just talking about.
Right, because
and we didn't get anything for a minute.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, poof, we got Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. So.
Yes, because for some reason
Everything
at this point, Fox was like, "We're going to start cranking out Fantastic Four."
Because of how relatively decent the first movie did. Decent.
Yeah.
So then everything I said about the first movie, take away for this one. This movie leaned way too far into the things that did not work for the first one. The only thing I liked was the Silver Surfer. Him personally, I thought he was done.
And Lawrence Fishburne does work with the MCU, so you could get him back as Silver Surfer. I'm just saying.
I hate you so much.
I had that 4-inch flip book of the Fantastic Four, ABJ, just so you know. But I did really like the Silver Surfer. There's one other thing about this movie that stands out that most people don't get. This is the one and only comic book accurate Stan Lee cameo.
Describe that. What do you mean?
Because Reed and Sue are getting married, and Stan shows up at the wedding.
That's right.
And the guy's like, who do you think you are? I'm Stan Lee. Oh, come on, get out of here. No, really, I'm Stan Lee. And they won't let him in because in the Fantastic Four comics,
That's right.
repeatedly, the Fantastic Four themselves report to Marvel Comics their adventures, and Stan Lee chronicles them in the Fantastic Four comics. So the Fantastic Four comic book is canon in the Fantastic Four comic book.
I kind of dig the fact that that's the case.
Yeah.
I do. I'll be honest right now. For me, this unless you want to give it a D, I think this lives in C territory immediately.
Right. Well, see, here's the other problem though. Galactus.
Oh, the worst. The worst. That probably is the only thing that would, for me, would bump it down into the D category. Is that whole element ruined it for me. Ruined any saving grace this had.
I was spending almost 2 hours of my life anticipating Galactus, and I got a cloud.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have known what to do. They're like, what are we doing? We're gonna call the Godzilla people and have them have a guy in a big suit walk through the city? I mean, it's I don't know.
Instead, the big fight was between Doctor Doom absorbing the Silver Surfer's powers and Johnny Storm absorbing the Fantastic Four's powers.
Which show me you have no concept of how the comics work without saying you don't have any concept of how the comics work.
Yeah, you take one of the greatest superhero teams and turn it into a solo.
Yeah, it was silly. I was like, why are you backdooring me into a Silver Surfer movie? Why don't you just make the Silver Surfer movie?
Yeah, so I honestly, I will give it a C because we have another Fantastic Four movie to talk about.
So real quick before we get there, I'm with you by the way. I will totally. I'm willing to put in C. I want to know what I feel like. There's a universe in which we would have gotten. The second movie should have been an actual Fantastic Four movie give me an actual Fantastic Four movie, whether Doom's involved or not. Mm-hmm. And then you build to the third one being Galactus.
Right.
And you actually have the real Galactus and you go Infinite Nullifier, you do all of it. You do all the stuff and I think you could have been a really fun.
Honestly,
thing.
I would have been a trendsetter back then because what I would have done if they had handed me the reins of Fox for that production would be to make a 2-parter and to make part 1 basically be, you call it the Rise of the Silver Surfer. You have the Silver Surfer show up. You have a lot of the elements that you have, but it ends with Galactus landing.
Okay.
And then part 2 is you would call it Doomsday because that was the name of the first Galactus appearance in the comics. And you have the Fantastic Four and the Silver Surfer against Galactus.
Interesting.
That I think would have been better is that if you, and of course, you would have Reed because the only way to stop Galactus at the time was the Ultimate Nullifier. So you have Reed, figure out the Ultimate Nullifier thing, and
when you would have got the first really good look, they could have introduced cosmic stuff sooner.
Yeah,
and had fun with it. But I don't know. But this is also where Jessica Alba gets a tan and is much blonder.
Yeah,
and she becomes unnaturally blonde. Johnny Storm becomes insufferably bad, and then ultimately becomes some weird version of the Super Skrull. At least in terms of he's got suddenly all their powers because they've been everybody at the time wanted to say what is it? It's not string theory, but they were like entangled.
Yeah,
and because that was the catchphrase at the time in science.
And Stan, I still want to see the Mole Man. I wish they would do Mole Man and Fantastic Four First Steps.
Dude, all you could have done for the second movie, have them finishing a fight with the Mole Man.
You can start it with the Mole Man fighting them and going
like down. He's the opening fight that you get past.
Yeah. And I am the Underminer.
Yes. You could have actually done. See, I would have loved it if that was the case. Because what you do is, here it is. Ready? Here's your second movie and you have the Mole Man and the whole bit. Do the opening adventure. The Mole Man bit is small and short and quick.
Right.
But then the buildup is to that big monster coming out from under the ground.
Yeah.
That's the enemy for the second movie. Then you end on the Silver Surfer showing up and is like, I have come to tell you, Galactus comes. Cut to black credits.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? And now you go into lean into the Mole Man stuff. And what you find out is the ridiculousness of it, but now it's like, oh crap, it's real. Right. It's not just some guy dressed up.
The downside is we are talking about early 2000s, and the visual effects for doing Mole Man's monsters would probably have been pretty bad.
Would have had to do a whole bunch of, I think, a bunch of guys in suits. If the Power Rangers could give us the putties in their outfits, you could have done his henchmen similar.
And Indy Tiger says, I want to see a Spider-Man Fantastic Four team up with Spider-Man going up against Silver Surfer first coming to Earth. Well, Spider-Man would
only if he's wearing the paper bag.
Yeah, Spider-Man would promptly get his head smashed in.
Only if no, he wouldn't. Spider-Man has faced. Do you even read comics? Spider-Man's the most awesome character in the world for one reason.
He's an awesome character.
He's faced everybody and lived.
but let's be real about power level here. Spider-Man is like a little better than Captain America strength and durability wise. Spider-Man's not even bulletproof. A blast from the power cosmic would eviscerate him.
Unless he becomes Captain Cosmos or whatever.
Yeah,
remember when Spider-Man was Captain Galaxy, Captain whatever?
Yeah.
What is that? What was he? I forget what he was.
He made me forget because you're stupid Captain Cosmos.
I know.
But yeah, he gained cosmic powers.
He would have been awesome.
Which, by the way, I love the cover to both the issue where he gets the powers and when he loses the powers.
Yes.
Because when he gets the powers, it says, guess what? Spidey's gone cosmic. Looks like Paste Pot Pete's picked the wrong day to pick a fight. And of course, you see Paste Pot Pete was one of the dumbest baddies of all time. Behind him with his paste gun. And Spider-Man's like raging with power cosmic. Then a few issues later, this is it. Spidey goes normal. Looks like Paste Pot Pete picked the right day to pick a fight.
That's awesome.
So
yeah, man. No, they had a lot of fun with it. All right. So what was the next? The next movie on the line, of course, goes back to the list, of course, itself, which is our X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Yes. Did we miss X-Men Last Stand somehow? I think we did.
Maybe no, because I think it comes out next.
I thought Last Stand was before Wolverine.
I don't know. You made the list, man.
I must have misnumbered it because Last Stand definitely Last Stand actually comes between the two Fantastic.
Yeah, I have it. I have X-Men. Oh wow, I don't have it anywhere. Where is it?
You don't have Last Stand in there?
I don't think so.
Okay,
that's okay because that's how bad it was. You probably were like, never mind.
It doesn't even qualify to be on the list because
that's the one we missed.
Yeah,
I have Days of Future Past. I have Apocalypse. I'm trying to think where they. Yeah, I think we missed it. Yeah. Again, not that we missed much, because for me that one would be a D all day.
Yeah. Well, and besides, they did remake it. They just called it Dark Phoenix the second time.
Wow, got it.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to that. So X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Sure. I'm trying to remember which one this was.
This is the one where they sew Deadpool's mouth shut.
Oh right, this is before. This is not the one with the silver suit and the whole bit. Yeah. Right. Okay, I like a lot of what the movie's trying to do, but at the time the comics were still coming out, as in like they were still doing a lot of this story, because there was a ton of everybody was like, wow, they're really grabbing from modern stuff instead of more of the older material that existed.
Right.
So they were reinventing his whole backstory. They borrowed from the whole Weapons Plus stuff, and they borrowed from, which is stuff in the comics that was part of the whole bit. There were tons of things they were borrowing from, and ultimately ruined Wade Wilson. We had that one.
They ruined a lot of characters in this.
Gambit, all kinds of people, man, were not doing good in this. Yeah. This was a bad movie. I'm not a fan of these movies. What did you think?
No, this is absolutely a bad movie. And in fact, even though yes, the script is horrible. The way they ruin a lot of these characters is horrible, but it's totally unforgivable to me, that stupid scene with Wolverine popping his claws for the first time, and it looks so bad.
When you just said there was the practical version of that in the first movie how do you guys go backward?
Yeah, the CGI claws looked so ridiculously cartoony.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I don't know if you remember, but before this movie came out, like weeks before, a rough cut of the film with unfinished visual effects got leaked on the internet.
Yes, I do
And
remember hearing about that. That was
so some and later after I saw the film, I actually watched the rough cut that was leaked. And people were saying when well, at least the visual effects will be better. But they weren't. And by the way, I love the fact that Wolverine's name origin comes down to a story about Wolverines howling at the moon when Wolverines don't howl.
yeah. It's that just goes. The writers were so bad in this.
Yeah.
They really were. It was not good.
Yeah.
All right, so I clearly, obviously, that's a D level for us. I'm assuming.
Yeah, yeah.
No problem. All right, which leads us to, it's funny again because we're just glazing right past the X-Men Last Stand or whatever, which is terrible. The very next one in line was X-Men First Class.
Yeah. So this was honestly for me the best X-Men live action film.
I'll go with you. I'll go there with you.
I really did like it. I thought that it was the closest they came to capturing the spirit of the X-Men. They still fell short of the mark. Like for one thing, okay, so wait a minute. Even in the first X-Men movie, Professor X talks about how Jean and Scott were two of his first students, and yet they're nowhere to be seen. His Scott's brother is there. So,
Havoc,
yeah.
which we never ever got any indicate. Like my problem was not that they did the characters. It's like they were like, well, we already saw these other characters. We didn't need to. It's that they never really tried to connect those dots ever.
Right. This would have been. Well, I did think that the movie was the best of the X-Men films. I think it would have been light years better had the team been, Beast, Angel, Iceman, Cyclops, and Marvel Girl.
Agreed.
Instead of bringing in these random new mutants just to bring in random new mutants. And if you wanted to have a couple of others that ended up getting recruited away, fine. But the initial team of good guys in the final fight should have been the original X-Men team.
Seeing Michael Fassbender as Magneto was genuinely a refreshing moment that I didn't, because I thought Ian McKellen rather, was a fantastic Magneto. I thought that him and Patrick Stewart were paragons, and then you introduced these two, and I'm like, wow.
They did it. Yeah, they actually did it 2 generations, which was
beautifully.
Beautifully.
Big fan.
Yeah, that McAvoy and Fassbender, I had no complaints about.
Agreed.
But the team of mutants behind them, I think, didn't work.
Agreed. Well, I thought it didn't work. I thought it was just.
Well, some of them were like, "Hi, I'm Angel. I'm a stripper. Check me out." And then she does
didn't
nothing.
didn't like her at all.
And it's like, no, that's not Angel. Angel is a stupid blonde dude. Who has,
I don't like the fact that the character of Darwin who's a guy whose literal mutant power is
kill the black guy.
What's that? Yes, but also his mutant power is literally, I can survive, and my body changes to survive anything, and then he somehow he dies. Yeah. I'm like, well, what? How about you don't understand how the power works? You could have killed anybody else. You chose him.
But again, Hollywood and evolution.
They don't understand how it works. I got you.
I'm sorry. Watch any episode of Voyager. Hollywood and evolution, they do not mix.
I'd love that.
People talk about religion and evolution. No, it's Hollywood and evolution.
So where do you think that lived?
Honestly, I would probably give First Class an A. I thought it was a solid movie.
Good. Same. So do I.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I thought that was an excellent movie. I thought it did a great job, like you said, sort of establishing itself as the new. Well, I say new, and then they turn right around
as the original X-Men.
Yes, no, as they did a great job. Yeah. And then right after that, sort of to keep that whole keep the original universe, if you will, alive, we got the actual The Wolverine.
Yes.
which was the
by the
sequel
way,
to Wolverine
best
X-Men.
poster of the entire X franchise.
It literally could have been a comic book cover. It looks so good.
That looks very Frank Miller.
Super Frank Miller, yeah.
And
I wouldn't be surprised to find out he actually did that, to be
yeah,
honest.
this is, they kind of did an MCU here where they took the Wolverine miniseries that Frank Miller wrote and made a loose adaptation of it into film.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that, I know a lot of people didn't like the Silver Samurai aspect. Yeah, it was a little predictable.
That's when it turned into Ninja Turtles for me, because he was so like, I mean, I love the Silver Samurai, but golly, they went way too mechanical. He was like Iron Man like Samurai Iron Man.
Yeah.
Very odd. But everything else, except for that element, was great.
I think that it would have been better had they, and I get why they didn't, because they wanted it to be big and flashy. But the irony is that they could have made it on half the budget had they followed the Frank Miller story a little closer.
True. It's very true.
Because for those of you that don't know, Mariku's father, who was played expertly by that one dude, I can't remember the actor's name, but
the guy, he's a big star in Japan.
Yeah,
huge.
Yeah. And
he was just in Shogun.
Yeah, Barclay's retrovirus. You're 100%. Yeah, you want to talk about evolution? Just threshold. Come on.
Nice.
But yeah, for some reason he's evolving to not be able to breathe our air. That's not evolving.
Agreed.
But anyway, so in the original, the Mariku's father was the big bad, not her grandfather.
Right.
And in the first time they meet, Wolverine and her fall in love. He doesn't approve, and he proceeds to show Wolverine just how much he doesn't approve by nearly killing him with a wooden sword.
He's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he was that badass. Then he meets Yukio. Yukio takes him to the Ninja Clan. He trains and learns and adapts with them. He goes back and he faces Mariku's father again, who, by the way, is a head member of the Yakuza instead of the Yakuza going after him. He is like a big boss in the Yakuza. And Wolverine and Mariku's father fight for real this time. And it's a very close fight, but Wolverine finally kills him by popping his claws in his face.
As one does.
Yes. And it was actually, very well done, because remember, this is 1980s. They didn't show graphic violence for the most part in comics. So what they did was they showed Wolverine's fist in front of his face, and then the next panel is a shot of Wolverine's face and the sound sknit, which is the sound of his claws popping out. So you know what happened.
But right. And the thing is, I feel like I love that culturally speaking, because shinobi of the time in the historical Japanese history, they had 3 claws that they would wear as an actual weapon.
Yes.
So I felt like that was a cool cultural point of connectivity to be like, hey, this person has this like thing that connects and looks familiar. You go, wow, I get it. It's easy to see him make that visual connection to what's happening. And that's a really interesting moment.
But yeah, so if that's how this went down, if it was a simple Yakuza story instead of superpowered samurai and Viper and all that,
Sure.
I think it would have been better.
So where do you think this lives?
I wish I could give it an S tier because it is my favorite Wolverine film.
It is really good.
But I can't quite go there because the Silver Samurai and Viper drug it down. And so I'll give it an A. But just know if they just cleaned it up a little bit, it could be an S tier.
I like. You know what? I'm gonna give you the A because I think it's a great pull.
Yeah.
I don't see why not. I love that. I think that's one of those that really fits nicely into that realm. Even though the first one was so bad, at least this is one of the few times that I'm like, oh, Hollywood learned their lesson in this moment from the first one to this one. Like,
and then they forgot that lesson.
That's hilarious.
Yes.
No, absolutely. And then they forgot that lesson with their version of Days of Future Past. Days of Future Past. Okay. So there's parts I like.
I lied. I got to correct myself. I lied earlier.
Go for it.
Okay. I said the X2 is the most overrated X-Men film. No, it's this one.
I see, but the thing is, I like what this movie attempts to do. This movie attempts to reconcile both versions of the franchise in a way that I felt worked really well, but it misses a lot of what's needed to make the story better. It's got a lot of stuff that they think they cheated on for
So-
whatever reason.
Creep demands that we answer the question:
Go for it.
How did Wolverine get his metal claws back after this movie? Is this movie considered canon? Well, that's actually very simple. Writing.
What are we talking about?
Well, remember, he loses his metal claws to the Silver Samurai, and then he grows new bone claws. And yet, in the next movie, this one that we're talking about right now, he's got metal claws again.
It's not because it's not. This isn't canonically the next movie. It is the next movie, but it isn't in timeline wise.
Yes, it is, because remember,
it's you're in the future of
it's
that.
the future. Yes, it is the future. Stuff has happened in between,
Right.
but there's zero explanation.
So real quick, the other thing you're trying to remember is you're trying to reconcile bone claws as factually part of the history. Wolverine, for decades in the comics,
the
Colossus
claws
has broken his claws and they've grown back. The metal. He's had numerous. The Hulk has broken his claws and he's grown back. So at the end of the day, he's like it wasn't ever a concern that they weren't metal until he started getting deeper and deeper and deeper. So to me, I didn't hiccup once around it.
But originally, the claws weren't even a part of his anatomy. The claws originally were something that the Weapon X program put in him.
I never understood it that way, but okay.
Yeah. The bone claws didn't come around until the 90s. And they started saying he had claws before he went through the procedure.
Right, I agree with that. They did say that.
But no, Stan, he does not have metal claws at the end of the Wolverine. When he pops his claws out at Magneto at the end, they are bone.
Yep.
And so now the one explanation you could give would be, well, he's buddies with Magneto now, so he could easily manipulate the adamantium in his body to stretch it out a little bit over his claws, to give him metal claws again. That's my headcanon on it, is that Magneto did it. But the problem is there's nothing on screen.
So okay. Now, so
there's also they completely hand wave away Patrick Stewart coming back as Professor X. That's even worse, because at the end of Last Stand, yes, they say that Patrick Stewart somehow transferred his consciousness to some random person, but now he's Patrick Stewart again, and he's in a wheelchair again.
Yeah, because comics. Read a book. Seriously, these things are the people come back, especially the X-Men. Literally, it got to the point in the comics that that's where the phrase that they coined. I thought you had died, or I thought you were dead. He's like, yeah, I got better. Yeah. The comics just started saying "I got better" as a catchphrase because they never really explained any of that stuff. So to me, none of that. I tripped over none of it because I was like, oh yeah, comic books. I know exactly. I get this. This makes sense.
You know what? I get that they do that, but it doesn't make sense.
It makes sense if you read comics it's just comics.
Hey, I get that the writers of Voyager just couldn't think of anything, so they threw science-sounding words together into a string of technobabble. That doesn't make the technobabble make sense.
You realize it's called technobabble? Not techno, let's make it make sense. It's babble.
Yes, but you do realize also, and you know this is true, the majority, you're going to a Star Trek convention next month.
I know.
Most Star Trek fans say, well, our franchise is based on real science, unlike Star Wars.
I mean, is it though?
It's not. It's
based on more science-y sounding stuff.
Yeah, it's sciencey sounding. So sure, antimatter is more science sounding than hypermatter from Star Wars, right? but just like unobtainium is a stupid name from Avatar, but hey, at least they're not even trying.
So where does this movie fit in our thing, do you think?
I would give this one an F. But
stop it.
No, I absolutely. So let me explain here. You might want to put your fight icon up.
Oh, really? Let's do it. Let's have that conversation. Hang on.
All right. So, as most of you that know about my comic book collection know, I have more Fantastic Four than anything else by a long shot. However, while it's a distant number two is equally a long shot ahead of everything else, and that is X-Men. And of X-Men, my absolute favorite story is the two-part story, Days of Future Past. Not any of the derivatives crap that came about Days of Future Past later. The original John Byrne Days of Future Past two-parter. That was absolute X-Men perfection. And I understand. And by the way, since we're talking about the Fox,
X-Men perfection.
it is, and since it's the Fox universe, right? And
I love getting you wound up. Go ahead.
this is the Fox universe,
Right.
and Fox made the Tim Story Fantastic Four movies. And guess who a major character in the X-Men Days of Future Past is? Franklin Richards. And so he's in the future. Franklin Richards, not freaking Kitty Pryde, is the reason they can send someone back in time. Now, the other thing is that it makes, the whole idea that Wolverine should go back in time is just because Wolverine was the most popular character at the time in the films. But it makes no sense in universe because your brain doesn't need to heal from time travel. That's just stupid. The way that it originally was that Kitty
You realize
Pryde
you're
was
talking about you're really talking about this. My thing is that we forgive Marvel all those things because I'm sorry, Civil War is nothing like Civil War. All I'm saying is let's be consistent. You're allowed to love and hate.
right, but I'm talking about a better story. It's not that Civil War in the movies is a great movie.
Right.
Okay.
Fair.
This is not a great movie. This is a movie that's okay, but it's not a great movie. And the problem is it's a 2-part comic book. It's not a 12-part miniseries. It's a 2-part. You could easily do this story exactly as presented in the comics in a single film. And let me throw here's my I'll throw this out here as how I would do it if you gave it to me to write. Okay, so obviously you need, if you're going to use the reason that they use, which makes a lot of sense, by the way, the reason they send Kitty back in time is because she was the newest member of the team and had not yet learned how to defend herself against psychic attack. And so when they projected her consciousness back, the young Kitty couldn't prevent it from happening. All right. So go to what we got. So this is a sequel, if you will, to First Class, right?
Right.
And so,
I mean, yeah, technically.
Yeah. So what you do is you grab a cast member. Hey, who's somebody that we've underutilized so far? How about Cyclops? He just joined the team. So we're going to send him back in time. He's dead, so I guess we'll have to pick somebody else. But we can pick any of the classic X-Men characters that have already been established that have not been seen in the First Class timeline.
Yeah, but I think you understand that's exactly the point. That's why they picked. You already said it. They picked Wolverine because he was the cool character. This and that. The characters. Yeah. The
but you know what? Wolverine was the cool character in 1979 when Days of Future Past was first written.
Yeah, and he was also the old manish whatever one in the future and all this other stuff. They had different. They were serving different purposes. Although here's the thing, they wouldn't write that story today.
Right. And by the way, Mystique being a freaking hero, F that. That's just because they had Jennifer Lawrence, and she wasn't even very good as Mystique. Rebecca Romijn was great as Mystique. Jennifer Lawrence was annoying as Mystique.
Okay, well, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that point. To me, I feel like they kind of were touching the same areas. I think they got convoluted when the story they were trying to tell for that very reason. I agree with you. I don't know that many of the storytelling decisions they made after were better, but I understand why they made those choices. My thing is this movie does a lot of really good things well, which is it establishes the future, it establishes the past, it creates a nice and interesting tether. Whether or not it followed the comics, that isn't my point of contention. I'm not here on a comic book show. I'm here on a movie show. I'm talking about the movies. This isn't let's compare the Fox comic books. It's let's compare the Fox movies.
So let's examine the movie for a minute. All right, so you're telling me that in 1973 President Nixon signed into law the Mutant Registration Act and had Trask build Sentinels that look like the Sentinels from the comic books in 1973. And yet it took them until, 2029 or something before the Sentinels got good enough to actually take down the X-Men? Wait a minute. Where were these Sentinels during every single X-Men movie?
No, what happened was they got first off. Remember, this is not always the same. This is not. They're not saying it's the same time frame. See, that's the other thing.
No, it
I think
is. This is
they may have this.
the prime timeline is that
I need to see
Trask,
where you factually have that from, because at the end of the day, you're conjecture. You're doing what you accuse me of doing all the time. You're filling in holes.
I'm going by what's on screen, because what's on screen is Magneto.
Are you talking about the actors?
No, because I know they made two different people play Trask, but no,
That's exactly where I was going with that. So I'm glad you said that.
Yes, and Trask was also, race swapped as well, as well as I guess deformity swapped. I guess
no, totally, yeah,
whatever you want to call that.
Right. I hate to say, honey, I shrunk the Trask, but it's just
shrunk him and bleached him. But you really don't know how to do laundry, do you? The cold water and bleach, not a good mix. No, but think about it. At the end of The Wolverine, right?
Right.
Magneto is trying to get Logan talking about how they're building this horrible weapon. However, a few years later, sometime, because we know that there's a time gap between the end of The Wolverine and the future part of Days of Future Past.
Right.
But sometime later in the future, it's explained to us that back in the 70s, because of Mystique assassinating Trask, they went full on trying to develop these Sentinels. And yet, the Sentinels were shown to be fully functional in 1973, just, without their shape-changing abilities.
Fully functional?
Yes. Programmed in multiple techniques.
It is. I was waiting. I was like, give me that Star Trek reference, man. Go on.
Bullets and missiles.
No, for sure. Go on.
Yeah. And so these Sentinels built by the government, right? And yet, 1973 to 2000. That's 27 years later. Patrick Stewart's Professor X goes to the president and says, hey, we all need to settle down now before things get out of hand. But they've been developing Sentinels for almost 30 years.
You do realize that's part and parcel what one of the major problems with the Fox X movies was?
I know. It's just
keep their own timeline right.
Yeah, the timeline makes no sense whatsoever. And you could have had it make sense by not having because in the original Days of Future Past, in the comic book version, and this is why I say, yeah, they can change things. I'm okay with that, but you need to change things either for the better or at least to make it more concise and easy to follow.
Like, a good example would be, I think, the changes they made to Civil War. Changes they made to Infinity War and whatnot from the comics were necessary and understandable, and ultimately helped the story they were wanted to tell.
Right, but in this case, almost every change they made was to the detriment of the film. Because I love it. I know, it's just you're so at the detriment of the film. Yes. Because so hear me out on this.
Sure.
In the past part of Days of Future Past,
right?
In the original. Mm-hmm. The X-Men weren't fighting Sentinels. They were fighting an assassination attempt by a team of mutants, the Brotherhood, led by Mystique, trying to assassinate Senator Kelly.
I think ABGA says it really well. He says, I think the timeline's actually reversed. Days of Future Past created the prime timeline by preventing early Sentinels. I agree. Yeah,
but everything we saw beforehand, though, was part of this Sentinel timeline, even though there are no Sentinels.
Or as Creep likes to say, because I think this makes tons of sense, he goes, they're in the Kelvin timeline.
Yeah. No, you know what? The Kelvin timeline at least makes sense.
I feel you.
This doesn't. There's no way that the Sentinel timeline of Days of Future Past could have ever happened.
Okay, so here's my issue. You found fault with a lot of things, and by the way, I'm not even going to really barely touch, because that's at the end of the day, for me, I can't disagree with you. I still,
of course, you can't, because I'm right.
Okay, but even then, regardless of right, I still had a good time with it. They still told a way better story than the previous X-Men movie, X-Men United. They told a much better story than the previous X-Men Last Stand. And I'm like, I'm sorry, it was probably as good as X-Men United.
Hey, you know what? Picard season 1 was way better than Discovery.
Picard season 2 was horrible. Anyway.
Yeah, but it was way better than Discovery.
I hate you so much.
So you know what? That makes it good, right?
So where does this go?
Well, whatever you want it to be, half that, because I would give it an F.
Okay, fair enough. In which case, I'm going to go ahead and put it there at the C. Because I was going to say B, but I'm willing to take your arguments into consideration and say, okay, let's go C. I'm willing to say it was a C because again, your arguments have merit. I'm not saying they don't.
Right.
But I'm just trying to say, I tend to look at these things a little bit through a slightly different lens than most people. Because again, for me, if you want me to forgive your garbage, you better give me a good time at the movies. And for me, this was a good time at the movies.
See, I think my problem was I'm such a fanboy of the comic book that I was getting this angry while watching the movie the first time.
Were you in the theater saying, like, this is not, I can't believe this? I could just see you.
Excuse me, but this is all wrong. No,
That's
okay,
hilarious.
but think about it. If it's just the assassination attempt without the Sentinels already being built,
Sure.
then you could buy that it took them 27 years to break down the genetic information of Mystique.
Right.
The problem is that there's no way it took them 27 years to develop mutant-killing robots when they had mutant-killing robots in 1973.
Yeah, but the mutant-killing robots they had in 1973 were just, we can detect you and we can shoot you. They weren't like they end up becoming.
The only reason they failed was because Magneto sabotaged them.
That's right. He threw a literal rebar into their
If Magneto had not lined them with metal, they absolutely would have annihilated the mutants.
All right, so then let's. You know what? Since I don't necessarily know we'll ever fully agree or disagree on this whole thing, but I do think it's time to let's shift to a film that we absolutely can agree on, and that's the next one in line, Fant4stic.
Yeah, that one doesn't even deserve to be on the screen.
I'm telling you, my issue with Fant4stic so much is that there was so much. I assumed that they were just going for it and going to give us the Ultimates with the Future Foundation and the whole bit. And it turned out to just be I'm going to be real blunt and crass. It was an abortion of a movie. This was such a bad take on that material.
You can actually take that phrase, abortion of a movie, literally because of the fact that the director just completely, which is too bad because his movie Chronicle is off the chain.
So good.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
But he just lost it making this movie.
But then he lost it publicly.
Yeah, and then the studio came in and tried to make... it's so funny. There are scenes where Sue, when you see her in that wig, and then you see her with her natural hair, and then the wig again, and then and it's like...
Yeah.
And look, honestly, it's funny because... And I know this is going to sound slightly racist, but I'm sorry. It's truth is truth. And it was my wife that pointed this out to me originally, so I'll use that as my defense.
Sure.
Johnny Storm. Now, don't get me wrong. Michael B. Jordan, awesome actor. I don't care if you race swap a character as long as you keep the fundamentals of the character.
Right.
But here's where it lost my wife especially. Then when she started telling me about it, I was like, yeah, I get you. Tell me an instance where the rich, single, black father adopts a white girl.
Why are you...
No, just explain that to me, and I will give this an A+, if you can explain that to me.
That's the same reason why you could never race bend Bruce Wayne. Okay, because otherwise you lose the narrative and you lose the message behind Bruce Wayne.
Now, here's the thing. If Johnny's black, you can make Johnny black, fine, but then you got to make Sue black as well.
Agreed. I'm like, dude, just go for it. Why? Yeah. What, apparently you can't have an interracial couple? Yeah. I'm sorry. Hi. Welcome to Nerd Fights.
Yeah, and this is freaking 2015. It's not like they're going to get crucified if they had an interracial couple in it.
I think I just inadvertently called us an interracial couple. What I meant was,
my
both
of us are in interracial relationships, but not with each other. Well, we are in an interracial business partnership, I guess you could say.
Totally.
So...
I'm sorry. That's funny. Because I could just see somebody right now going in the comment section, what? You guys are an interracial couple?
Well, technically, we're a couple of guys, and we're different races. So
that's right.
But yeah,
when do I need to go make an AI theme song for us? The interracial couple. That's awesome.
So,
anyways,
but yeah, it makes no sense that the casting of Johnny and Sue.
I agree.
Because and this is where, like I said, they kept the
And
basic.
Michael B. Jordan was so good.
Right. Well,
He
that's what
did
I
a
say.
great job.
Yeah, Michael B. Jordan was fine as Johnny.
Yes.
But you know what? You know what a fundamental thing about Johnny is? His sister.
Agreed.
It's his biological sister.
Yeah.
The fact that they're siblings comes up all the frickin' time in the comics.
It does.
And so to make her, oh well, you know, I'm adopted.
All right. So, what do you think this lives in the list? I personally think it's a D.
D only because there's nothing lower.
Agreed. We can do it off the screen, but
Yeah.
all right. No, I do agree with that. I 100%.
And poor Ben Grimm losing his junk.
Well, and Stan even pointed out, really a lot of the issues you had was the director wanted, because he's gone on record now as saying
He wanted to do a body horror thing.
but he also had a different vision for what this was supposed to be. And then the studio, when him started arm wrestling, and it's like, I don't know, man. I feel like there's a version of this that would have actually worked really well if they'd just let it be. But that's my own thought.
Creep thinks we should do a remake of the song Ebony and Ivory.
Oh my God, so much. But I want to do the Saturday Night Live version.
Yeah. You are black and I am white. Like some Eskimo pie. Let's take a bite. Yeah.
I love that so much. That's such a great, I love that. My father raised me, bro. He raised me good. He raised me on Saturday Night Live, and it was wonderful. Anyway, all right. Now we start getting into stuff we might recognize a little more. The very next movie to come out in this list was the first Deadpool movie.
Yes.
After living in development hell for so long that someone, don't know who, quote, wink, wink, leaked a phenomenal scene that is, it's totally mostly CGI.
Someone whose name rhymes with Brian Pennell.
That's right. And the first director he got was a guy who'd come from video games, who had a video game, who did all the cinematics for a lot of video games. And they were like, they partnered, they made this thing, and it was released, and fans lost their minds.
Yeah.
And we got the Deadpool movie. So what do you think?
Oh, definitely goes in the S tier.
For sure. Absolutely.
And yeah, Ryan, okay, so the thing about Ryan Reynolds and the reason that all three Deadpools are so good is because Ryan understands the comic book, and he's like, no, we're not going to compromise. We are putting the comic book on screen.
I love it.
And so even though, you know, like, and I'm not a big fan of the fact that comic books have gotten so vulgar, but in the case of Deadpool, he's the exception that proves the rule for me. It's just like, I don't want all comic books to be dark and gritty, but I never want Batman to be anything but dark and gritty.
I agree with that.
And so I don't want comic books to all be vulgar, but I don't want Deadpool to be nice pool.
Yeah, he doesn't need to be warm and fuzzy puppy guy.
Yeah. And the whole point of Deadpool is he's a walking sack of deconstruction.
Agreed.
And so I absolutely loved this take on it. And, you know, I think Ryan Reynolds, and you know, the funny thing is, you do know the inspiration for him doing this, right?
No,
It was an actual panel from a Deadpool comic book that Ryan read. And
really?
yes, he was reading a Deadpool comic book, and when he revealed his face, someone said it looked like a Shar-Pei had a baby with Ryan Reynolds.
Oh my God, I love you.
And so he was
That's
like,
the best.
yeah.
That is so the best. Okay,
Yeah.
so getting closer because we're getting close to our time, and I don't want to eat up too much more. Let's bury this because trust me, it's kind of on a downhill slide for a second here. X-Men Apocalypse.
Just when you thought the X-Men franchise couldn't get any worse,
Stop
like,
it. Just when you were hoping that they would continue on their
Okay.
trajectory toward greatness. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. That's just me being silly. I'm totally kidding.
Yeah.
No, then we get this.
Yeah, this
It was so bad. So bad.
I don't even understand what they were going for.
I'm like, why did read a comic book? It's funny, as much as I was arguing with you about the comic books, this was nothing. Wasn't inspired by the comics, didn't feel like it had that same energy. I was like, I feel like this was written by somebody who was told a story that someone read once about Apocalypse and maybe got the facts right. And who was friends with Olivia Munn and wanted to see her as Psylocke. Okay? That was literally the only thing that happened.
Can I just say, you know, look, I'm a loving guy. I'm a Christian. I try to love all humanity. I hate Olivia Munn.
Why?
Because from the first
I grew up with
time,
her on G on the
yeah,
G.
when she was on G4 being a total poser.
You're so mean. She was a host like everybody else.
Yes, I know she was a host like everybody else. Do you really think she sits there and plays video games with
No,
nerds?
no way.
Of
No
course
way.
not. She's a poser.
I mean, she says she does, but I don't like. She still says she does, but I don't
Yeah,
think that's
which
true
she
at all.
lies. And
She lies.
if she was half the nerd she says she is, she would not have been in this movie.
Well, I think what sold her was the comic accurate Psylocke outfit, because that's all that was comic accurate was the outfit.
Well, but that's
Because
the
God
funny
forbid
thing.
they actually give her psychic blade. No, they have to give her a psychic sword.
But the funny thing is, this movie, they tried to superficially make it look more like the comics, because everybody has more comic book accurate costumes.
sure,
Professor X actually is bald again.
which
Apocalypse does look like Apocalypse, but the
yeah.
but it's, you know, it's just.
It's
And by the way,
just
I actually
trash.
the one girl that plays Storm, she looked great, you know, but you know, just because some things look nice doesn't make it a good movie.
I agree with that 100%.
Did I say I'm a loving God creep? You know what I meant.
See, and then it's funny after all that, and then we come to, and by the way, because I don't have much else to say about that movie, it was just bad.
Yeah,
It was just bad.
Yeah.
But then we get into the greatness, in my opinion, that was Logan.
Yes.
From the first moment I saw the trailer with Johnny Cash, I bought the Johnny Cash album that song comes from, the Nine Inch Nails remake.
Yeah.
The cover, and it is such an amazing movie. This movie knew exactly what it was, exactly what it wanted to be, and exactly the story it wanted to tell, and it did it unapologetically, and I felt is worth everything that it got. To me, this is the definition, right next to Deadpool, of being an S tier movie.
Okay, so first of all, yeah, Logan, from a technical aspect, from a storytelling aspect, and everything, probably the single best X universe film.
I'll go with that.
And by the way, this poster alone shows how much care was put into this.
Oh, so much.
Because this is a grab your heartstrings
100%.
poster.
Super fast.
If you have any idea who Wolverine is, you're like, wait a minute, why is there a child holding Wolverine's hand?
Yeah.
You know, and you know,
Super eye catchy. Like,
yeah.
whoa.
But the I only have one major beef with the film, and that is what they did to Professor X. I did not like the fact that Professor X had become a cynic, that he became a mass murderer. I know unintentionally, but that he basically wiped out the X-Men, and then he died like an absolute wuss.
Well, my thing is, what was wrong with the original version of this idea from the comics? And again, I'm going to the comics.
I've never read Old Man Logan, so
in the original comics, the tragedy is all the villains in the Marvel universe decided to team up. And they were like, well, let's get people who are outside of our realm, people who don't fight the X-Men. And one of the people they brought was Mysterio. Mysterio uses his mind warping abilities, gets Wolverine in a frenzy up, makes him goes into a berserker rage, and keeps his mind clouded enough to not know he's killing the X-Men.
Yeah,
so Wolverine thinks all the villains. I agree with you. I understand why they did what they did. They wanted one nice hurrah for Patrick Stewart to get a chance to actually.
Yeah, but if you had taken Patrick Stewart out of the film and you made that his tragic backstory, holy crap, that would have been a better story.
Yeah,
because then he could have been dealing with that the whole time, and that's the reason he doesn't want to go back to action.
Yeah,
but then finally he decides this little girl needs a father, and and granted, the whole thing with Logan and X-23, I loved. I just couldn't stand whenever Patrick Stewart was on the screen, because turning Professor X into a literally demented, sad shadow of his old self, when Professor X is the one person in the X franchise who is the absolute epitome of optimism. And you've taken that away. You muted again because you don't know how to.
If Professor X is a good, so the paragon you're talking about, the comic books have really turned him. He's rough.
Right, I know,
made
but
some very
that's
questionable
after I
calls.
stopped reading. That's the
Right.
thing.
No, that's fair.
That's the Professor X I remember was the moral clarity. You know, he was the person who
Is that why you have to say it like that? Mortal
well,
clarity.
but he was the one who absolutely, under no circumstances, were we going to take revenge against humans for their bigotry and stuff. You know, that was Magneto's bag. You know, and
Right on.
so and honestly, you know what? If Logan had, let's say, okay, and this throwing this out there,
Sure.
what if instead of the story they do, Logan is concerned because after the incident that where he killed all the X-Men, he loses his temper very easily. And so he's always worried that he's going to go into a berserker rage and start murdering everybody.
Right.
And so who does he find? The only person that could stop him at any time, Magneto.
Okay.
And so Magneto becomes Logan's guardian because Magneto's job is, if Logan does go berserk, to stop him.
So what? Where do you think this lives?
All that being said, I'm still willing to give it an S tier because I know
All right.
I know the kind of impact it has with people.
And you know that there will be a mutiny on this channel otherwise.
Yeah. I ain't stupid.
I ain't stupid, he says. Yeah. Well, no, and of course, I know you're not stupid, especially when you the joy and wonder that is Deadpool 2.
Yes. That poster says it all.
It really does. It's. I do not think this is as good as Deadpool 1, but I definitely think this is an excellent movie.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, Deadpool 2 was a worthy sequel. And by the way, unintentionally a perfect setup for Deadpool and Wolverine.
Agreed.
And you know,
we got Cable.
Yeah, Cable and Josh Brolin did great as Cable.
He totally does.
You know, Brad Pitt, I mean, one of his best performances ever as the Vanisher.
It's so good as the Vanisher.
Yeah, and you know, that's the magic of Ryan Reynolds, because only Ryan Reynolds could talk Brad Pitt into doing a part. He has no lines and is only seen on screen for about 3 frames.
It's amazing.
You know. But that was so beautiful when you see him and you're like, oh, wait, what's that? And he's gone, you know? and so
very cool. I personally think this is a good, excellent movie. I don't know it's S, but I definitely think I'd put it at A.
No, I think it's a solid A tier. I think that the X-Force Massacre was awesome.
Oh my God, it was so brilliant, because I was worried they were going to try to change the whole thing into somehow a different context.
But honestly, the Russell storyline was weak.
Yeah, I didn't know that I needed that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I needed it. I didn't even know why.
Well, you needed something to move the plot forward because Cable needed a reason to be there.
But it was also the first time they start making him way more, like they start making Deadpool somewhat concerned, and I don't know. It was weird. It was very, very strange.
Yeah.
All right, so then the next movie is bottom. To me, this is bad. Can I tell you how bad this is? I haven't finished this movie.
Oh, you haven't?
It frustrated me so badly, and I have sat down multiple times to try to finish watching it, and every time I do, it gets worse. It just the way you were probably shouting at the screen during that one is how I feel here.
Oh no, I was shouting at the screen for this too, and
it was so
and for
bad.
Last Stand.
This was so bad.
Let me go back to Last Stand for a minute.
Go for it.
Okay, so Last Stand, we all know, was the abomination of a film to cap the original trilogy of X-Men films.
Got it.
Where they really, really butchered the Dark Phoenix story with Famke.
Yeah.
And as horrible as it was, the one thing that kind of redeemed it was the Wolverine, where Wolverine's dealing with the PTSD after killing Jean.
True.
But everything else about that movie was just absolutely awful. So then Fox is like, you know what? We screwed up Dark Phoenix. Let's do it again. Hey, here's a great idea. Let's get the guy who wrote and directed the last Dark Phoenix movie that was a complete train wreck and bring him back to do it again.
Right.
Who thinks like that?
Yeah, no, I don't know what their thought process was at all for that either. This movie was so bad, I can't give this any kind of respect or love. Okay. It's such a horrible movie.
By the way, so since you haven't seen the end, the interesting thing is you find out that Magneto could have easily taken over the world at any given time.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Because basically, Apocalypse doesn't even do anything. By the way, the whole age of Apocalypse takes place over a few days, so it's like the week of Apocalypse.
I hate you.
But it's like that could go side and side with the weekend of Ultron.
Yeah, totally.
But Apocalypse doesn't do anything. Instead, he gets Magneto to almost destroy the planet. He doesn't give Magneto powers. Magneto just does it with his magnetism powers.
I thought he amped up Magneto's powers a little bit. I thought. I could be wrong. I thought that's what he did.
I don't remember if he did. If he did, though, because Magneto has already demonstrated that he could affect the entire world's magnetic field, and so
absolutely,
yeah.
All right.
That's the very epitome of an unnecessary film.
I think we're at the last entry.
No, we have two more.
Do we?
I think, yeah.
I don't know. Is it this is the next thing I got?
Right, and then there's one more after that.
Oh, is there?
There should be, yeah.
I'll take a look.
Okay, so X-Men 97.
Let's go.
The continuation of the X-Men animated series.
Wonderful.
Earlier.
Excellent.
It is a worthy follow-up for me, to be sure, but not as good as the original.
Really?
No, now, yes, they had some great heartstring moments. One of which, they kind of show in this, where what happens to Gambit is tragic.
Right.
However, I still think all that is going to be retconned away by some kind of time travel shenanigans in season 2 or 3. But I think there were some good elements to it. I genuinely do. But I think that they missed the mark of the first series by trying to make it more adult. It didn't need to be more adult. They just needed to make it like the original.
I think I've seen, and I took it more like they were this. To me, it felt like Bo DeMeo, as the lead writer and the showrunner at the time, he said he evolved with us. So where we all saw that when we were kids, now these characters are also growing up by their life experiences. I don't mean the years. That's not what I'm talking about. Right. But I mean like the events that start coming and hitting them begins to take their toll, and we get to see an evolution, to use the very
But you know what? I
word.
I don't need an X-Men cartoon where everybody's banging each other.
I didn't know who was banging who.
Well, let's see. Rogue was banging Magneto.
We don't know that. They didn't know. Now,
what do you mean we don't know it?
We don't know that.
They show her in a bra and panties with him.
No, that's her getting dressed.
Yeah, why do you think she was getting dressed with him? You think she just, hold on, I'm just going to get dressed in front of you. Is that normal female behavior?
I don't know. Yes, actually. But I don't know what you're talking. Let me talk about
it. Wait, women just normally they must really trust you.
Hey, man, I'm a very trustworthy fella. Bra and panties, X-Men 97. I probably shouldn't be searching this because I'm going to find something. I'm going to find something
really bad,
utterly not related to what I was looking for. No, she's not in bra and panties ever. What are you talking about? You'd have to find that scene for me because I don't recall that scene in the least. There's the outfit she's wearing that has some little fishnetty neck things and fishnetty gloves and stuff that she's wearing when she goes to the ball. But otherwise, she's dressed like Rogue the whole time until that moment. And well, then the pink dress she wore when she was back at the X Mansion. But otherwise, she doesn't get undressed. Now, there's the morph joke because of the Danger Room schedule, where he's like, "Oh, look, she's working with him here. They're partnering. They're doing this. Boy, they must be really working on a lot of strategy and stuff." And so there was that like bit, but it wasn't that I could remember anything legit salacious.
I disagree.
Although, okay, hold on real quick here. Just Zero to Hero says Rogue was absolutely in a relationship with Magneto. Think that was backstory though. No, that's true. She absolutely was. And they took they merged some of the old. Oh my gosh, that place in the Antarctic. I can't remember what it's called. The Savage Land.
Savage Land. Yeah.
Yeah, they took some of those materials. Absolutely.
Let's see.
Hey, Penny. Kirk pulling on his boots, Mr. Know-It-All. Yeah, legit. He was like,
I mean, there was a couple of Kirk pulling on the boots scenes, and
love that so
I
much.
really didn't need that.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, I'll totally give you that. That's totally fair.
And I don't, and I'm not saying, I'm not a prude. I don't like. Hey, we gave Deadpool an S tier, and that has one of the most graphic sexual montages in recent
It
film,
really
right?
does.
And in fact, I mean, the Women's Empowerment Day moment alone,
Wonderful.
yeah.
I love that whole shot was so
But
good.
that falls in context of the type of movie we're watching, and the story they're telling.
I'll go with that. Absolutely.
But in this is supposed to be, it's supposed to feel like it's just the next season of X-Men. And for the first couple episodes, that's exactly the feeling I got. But then it started to, and the funny thing is, you can even go back, read some of the reviews on this. Some of these top critics that you know how critics
Sure.
are. I'm talking about educated critics, not YouTube critics. But you know how critics are very snobbery with their film and all that, and they'll say, "Oh, and it's so wonderful that they injected sexuality into this," and it's like, why is that wonderful?
Agreed.
Okay, that doesn't make it better.
No, it doesn't.
Unless there was a good reason for it. I think that Rogue and Remy's relationship was front and center, not Rogue and Magneto just to make Remy jealous. That was, to me, unnecessary.
Are you saying
And
Remy?
Remy,
I was thinking-
however you say his name.
I thought we were getting out of the jokes, the inference jokes. When you said
Shut up.
Remy, I was like,
That's not what I
think
meant.
you meant
Jeez,
Remy?
you're just bad.
what? I not me, man. I play the ball where it lies,
So
brother.
I would give this a solid B.
Really?
Yes.
A B?
That's a good grade.
Look here, man. If you're going B, I don't know how good a grade that is, okay? We probably need to have a quick discussion about that. I am definitely more in line with thinking that it's this to me was like amazing and like I don't know if it needed to be S, but at the very least, I figure it's on par with it because you have to understand it does amazing things. It never ever faltered. Yes, there may be questionable stuff, but you got a consistency that I thought was
Never
exactly like
faltered,
the
huh?
original.
I got
I
one
didn't
word. I got one word for you, buddy.
Please.
Mojo.
Whatever. I loved Mojo. Mojo's exactly like Mojo from the comics. Now that episode also was an episode, and mind you, I feel like they didn't have to split the two things. I thought that was silly. I think you either
Yeah.
go
How about
give
Life,
Mojo-
Death 1 and 2? Feeling like drag me on to death.
Okay, so I feel like they didn't give whether it was the Shadow King or it was actually that other person from the other ones. No, of course it's not better than Batman. Get out of here. Which Batman? The new one? Because this walks the dog on Cape Crusader all day. Cape Crusader can go.
Well,
get
yeah,
bent.
This is way better than Cape Crusader.
Absolutely. No,
Now George Clooney's Batman. Now that was magic.
I hate you so much. No, I feel like this version of the X-Men was exactly what it needed to be. I felt like it gave us a really solid look at where they are and where they're going. I loved this. To me, this is A all day. I'm willing to meet you someplace in the middle. But
Well,
like,
someplace in the middle would be like we did with the first X-Men and go A-, B+.
okay, I'm down. I'm down for that. You want to do that?
Uh,
All right, I'm done. There you go. I'm okay with that. I'm okay. So anybody who's looking at this list who thinks, oh, they messed up those two. Nope, those are exactly in the middle where we want them to be. It's totally fine. And then you were absolutely correct. There is another movie, which how could I possibly have forgotten?
yes.
Because clearly we've already kind of talked a little bit about it, but that was none other than, of course, my favorite, the most recent Deadpool and Wolverine.
All right, this is hands down the best X-Men film. It's also the best Daredevil film. And I would probably say the best Blade film ever. And hey, why not? The best Punisher film, even though Punisher's not really even in it. But hey, one of Punisher's villains is. This is just freaking awesome sauce across the board.
Agreed. I think if you want to see it, please, by all means, check out our review that we did when we talked all about the spoilery on Nerd Fights last week or the week before. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing, this movie. I think it does, like you said, it gave us cappers on a lot of things that I didn't realize we needed. For instance, did you realize clearly for X-23 to be in this movie, at some point, Someone said Logan shouldn't have died in her timeline, and that's why she was pruned.
In the void. Yeah.
And I was like, my mind was blown when I heard that. I was like, that is so
Well, and
true.
I actually like kind of what this is an interesting theory I heard from somebody talk about, and I think it's an interesting idea. What if after this, because we know that thanks to their heroic efforts, the Fox timeline has been saved, right? So what if Deadpool and Wolverine are now living in Canada helping
I
young
hate you so
mutants get
much.
across the border? And so Logan takes place. The person they're contacting on the other side of the border is Deadpool and Wolverine,
No, agreed.
along with the rest of Deadpool's friends. So Colossus is there, Negasonic Teenage Warhead is there, Yuki's there. They're all,
Yuki's there.
or not. Is it Yuki? No.
Yeah, no, you're right. I just thought it was
Yuki.
funny you said we have to include her because we have to include her.
Well, Yuki is a mutant, so
No,
you know.
yes. I wish I knew more about what her powers were.
But all the people we see at Deadpool's birthday party are the people that are actually in Canada trying to rescue mutants.
Agreed. All right. Well, listen, we're getting close to the end of this thing. I actually do have some stuff I got to get going to, but so let's look at the whole list overall. And yes, I'm just making assumptions that bad boy's going in S. There's been some questions in the comments. I know that Zeros to Hero was curious about why X-Men Days of Future Past is so low. Trust me, plenty of reasons. By all means, go back and take a look at I think we actually had to go to a hot take.
Yeah,
Or,
Days of Future Past we disagreed a bit on. I didn't like it as much as he did, but overall, look, if you want to be realistic about it, do you really think Days of Future Past is better than any of the films above it?
That's a good question. I think there's arguments to be made, but I'm with you. I agree. I stand by our list all day.
Yeah.
Even the areas where I compromised, I stand there also because you made compelling arguments, and that's ultimately I think what happens here all the time when it comes to that stuff. So,
and that's but that's the main thing to look at. Like, so the S tier ones, there should be no movie at A, B, C, or D that you think is better than the S tier films.
Agreed.
And so like if you think that Deadpool 2 is better than Logan, then either Logan doesn't belong in S or Deadpool 2 doesn't belong in A.
I'll go with that.
So that's kind of how. And let's be real: Blade, Trinity, Elektra, X-Men Origins, Wolverine, Four Stick, Age of Apocalypse, and Dark Phoenix are all dumpster fire films. So which is too bad that the lowest category is the most filled up.
Which I think that ultimately speaks volumes to why we're ultimately coming to where we are ending up now. So
and notice it's a lot of the later films.
True.
The last Blade film, the sequel to Daredevil, the last Fantastic Four film, and the last two X-Men films are all there. So that's a problem. If you can't grow your franchises better, then they're ultimately going to fall apart, which is why the MCU did so well up until Endgame and why it struggled since then.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, listen, this has been an amazing discussion. I have loved and enjoyed every bit of it. Please keep talking. Keep the conversation going. Reach out to all of us if you want. You can find me on the socials anywhere where it's at A Real Know-It-All. Salty, let everybody know where they can find you.
Well, here and Twitter, that's about it.
Right on, man.
Sorry, X. I keep forgetting.
That's right. It's X now. Or otherwise the Elon police come after you.
Yes.
So although X I feel like is an appropriate name for it now since we're talking about the X-Men stuff. Yeah. Anyways. All right, guys. Any other thoughts before we go?
Just that you're wrong.
We'll find out. Next week, don't forget, we're going to be giving you all the updates about what happened at D23. So be looking for that. I cannot wait to see each and every one of you guys. Sir, I will talk to you later, Captain. Thank you, guys.